Howdy. Wow. How's it going? It looks like the data's still being sent from Restream. Hold on. Maybe I'm not live. It says I'm live, though. Okay, we should be good. Okay, howdy. What's going on? Let's see here. Copy link. Paste the link. What's going on here? What the Alright, cool. Alright, what's going on? 1 second. There's my face. Here it is again. Awesome. Alright, so today we are going to be doing an in-depth critical analysis of the Timcast episode, or rather live stream, of him and the Serfs. Now, sorry about that, hold on. Here we go. So, my familiarity with the Serfs has been relegated primarily to shit I've seen on Twitter, and I understand that that can definitely be misrepresentative of some people's opinions or arguments or what have you, right? The general feeling I have had with the Serfs and Lance has primarily been one of disappointment, for lack of a better term. More so, like, it doesn't strike me as though he is capable of effectively navigating political discourse, and consequently that could have negative consequences for the ideology that he personally subscribes to. I don't know if I necessarily agree with Lance on a lot of things. I don't watch his content or anything like that. However, my understanding of his content has been that he is like a leftist, and that's fine, whatever. But there are probably things in which I definitely take issue with what he, his personal beliefs. There might be some. I don't know for sure. But he went on Timcast, and this was probably a mistake. I'm actually kind of concerned, because from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like he did a good job. There are some people who have said he has done well, but from what I've seen, it doesn't seem that way. I'm going to watch the whole Timcast, however, because I would like to see how he does, I guess, if it's really as bad as people think it is, or say it is, and we'll go from there. So, without further ado, let's capture. Hold on, 1 second. Okay. Let's capture this. 1 second. No, we don't want to capture that. Picture in picture. Here we go. Cool. We got that going. You're probably wondering why I'm framing it like this, because we are going to be playing a game while we do this. Because that's what I do. I am OCD, or not OCD, ADHD, so I'll gotta do two things at the same time. The question becomes, what game? Probably, I guess this. Alright, I'll have to turn down the volume and stuff. Let's go ahead and play. Now, hopefully this doesn't crash or anything. Probably won't. Actually, probably will, because, my luck is obviously always good. But yeah, so anyway, I am interested in seeing how Lance does. I, again, am not privy to his content. My understanding, like I said already, is that he's a leftist. So he's bound to have some good opinions, right? My concern, however, is the fact that he's on Timcast, which is a very large platform, and that's a platform you don't want to fuck up on, right? There's a very specific strategy that you need to undertake if you're going to be on like a large platform like that. Definitely. You're obviously going to be you're going to be in the presence of conservatives, many of whom are going to be it's basically like a 4v1, or however many people are in the studio, in addition to all the people in the chat, right? Because most of them are conservative, or at the very least, in the center or whatever. So that is, you got the cards are kind of stacked against you from the beginning here. It's his show, you're on his platform. I mean, like, there's a lot going against you. If you combine that with the fact that you may not be the best rhetorician, then it's not really good. I think that you need to be prepared, and like you need to like go into the conversation with like a strategy, I think. Now I'm hoping that this doesn't give me too many issues. If it does, we are gonna have some problems. Let me just see how it runs. Alright, I think we'll be fine. Okay. Alright, anyway. I just realized you can't see the game. That's fine. Let me just go ahead and change it. Alright. There I am. Whoops. Put the game back. You can have my face right there. This is the main thing we're going to be watching, so I'll make this a little bigger. Okay. So, without further ado, I guess let's do it. Let me just turn down the volume. Audio, rather. You know what? Just mute it. Why not? All right. Okay. Let's hear what's going on, and let me make sure the audio is okay too.
Share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Lance from the Serfs.
Thank you so much for having me.
Looks like the audio's.
Balls being in this room right now. It feels like I took.
Man, looks like the audio's good. I think probably. Oh shit. I'm hoping it is. Give me 1 second. Let me just go use the restroom before we submit ourselves to this. All right. Oh, I'm kind of nervous. I don't know why. I'm a little nervous here. Okay. What was I was gonna say something too. Ooh. Okay, let's just do it. Yeah.
Evil acid or something. Because I've been watching this show so much. Yeah. Just like everything is here. It's wild.
It's bigger than it looks like, right?
It's bigger than it looks like. When you're actually sitting in the room, it's actually, there's a lot more props than you ever think. credit for. I thought there was just like some samurai swords and like the occasional gun or something, but there's like
That's a real Civil War rifle.
There's a real Civil War musket.
That's right, rifled musket.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
The
Yeah,
house
it's a
is like
Union Civil War. It was never used.
It's like a museum
Very
here.
cool. Yeah, very cool stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do you do? Who are you?
I am a leftist commentator. I do politics, comedy from a dumpster fire perspective, and I have opinions, and sometimes people like to hear those opinions, and then they tune in to listen to them.
Oh, sounds good. All right, well, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we have a lot of opinions to go through. We also got the exact same
Sure.
version of Lance, Seamus Coughlin.
That's how they describe me on the streets. My name is
Anti-Lance?
Yeah, exactly. I thought, no, they call him the anti-Seamus, I thought. But my name's Seamus Coughlin. I make cartoons. We call them
British.
Freedom Tunes. And he's British? Is that... Why you always got to take it to an ethnic place with me, man? Why is ripping on me for being Irish? I was born here. But I make cartoons. I have a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. I'm also a podcaster. We uploaded a cartoon today, by the way.
Interesting.
Y'all might want to check that one out. And I also have a stream on Rumble called Shamer. If y'all want to take a peek at that as well.
And we have Moon Lord himself.
I am the Moon Lord.
He knows.
No longer Weed Lord. I have evolved. I have become
He knows.
one with the essence of the vibration of the Catholic reality. So good to see you, Lance.
So good.
And if you don't know, you don't know. But I am the Moon Lord. Let's get hot.
And I am Serfs.com as always, guys. Let's get to it.
Let's jump into this first.
Wait, actually,
pressing the wrong
look,
button
this
over
is, I gotta flag this. This is the first time Ian and I have done a show together in almost a year.
Since we
Oh,
screamed
it's not
about,
bad.
I was yelling at you about
Yeah,
religion or
exactly.
something.
Exactly.
Oh,
This is
alcohol,
our
I
first
guess.
show. Yeah, this is our first
Welcome
show
back,
back.
Seamus.
Yeah, it's
Great
good
to
to
be
be
here,
here, man.
Yeah, I've evolved on my stance on religion.
We've also talked off air. We've talked off air a bit, but it's just funny that it's like I just realized it's our first episode we're both doing together. I've been seeing you for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, we went last time we talked. We were talking about like I brought up vice. I was talking about alcohol. It's your vice or whatever. I said I think that was the real point of contention. And everyone's like, Ian, you're such a dick. I was like, I was just talking to Seamus. We were just talking. Like,
Yeah,
we were
but he's
talking.
Irish, you can't say
Anytime. But we were talking about.
That's racist.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but I don't really care.
No, yeah, well, I was just it was a discussion about alcohol because I was saying that alcohol is not inherently sinful. Like Christ turned water into wine. It was his first public miracle.
I've gone
His
through.
blood was made with wine.
Well, no,
Oh, okay.
with transubstantiation, the properties of bread and wine remain, but it actually becomes his flesh and blood.
I've had like serious problems with alcohol personally, which is probably why I was projecting issues for these things.
Oh, I was just asking if you actually eat the blood of Christ. Is that Christ is inside you?
Yeah.
And then, but like his blood is alcoholic. Is that why it's wine?
So the properties of bread and wine remain, but what we believe as Catholics is that it's his literal flesh and blood. Okay. His body, blood, soul, and spirit.
but he's not made of bread and wine.
No, he's not literally made of bread.
Get crunk.
Okay.
All right, let's read the news. Here we go.
Wait, we also have Serge Dupre. I
Sir,
didn't
we already did say what's up. Yes.
Okay,
Man, Moonlord.
Thanks, Doc.
All right, here's the story. We got this ABC 7 New York police issue call for help. Outrage continues to grow over deadly subway chokehold encounter. So the death of a subway rider who was put into a chokehold by a former Marine on train has been ruled a homicide, and now activists are calling for charges to be filed. They have planned several protests and rallies on Thursday as the NYPD has issued a call for public help in their investigation. Jordan Neely, 30, died from a compression of the neck, the city's medical examiner determined Wednesday. Neely is recognizable to some New Yorkers as a Michael Jackson impersonator who regularly danced in the Times Square Transit hub. On Monday afternoon, he was yelling and pacing back and forth on an F train in Manhattan. Witnesses and police said when he was restrained by at least 3 people, including a U.S. Marine veteran.
Just to be clear, I'm not really... I've heard of the story, but I've not been keeping up with it at all, so... I'm not going to make any immediate, like... I guess, prescriptive statements regarding this.
Who pulled one arm tightly around his neck. A physical struggle ensued, leading to Neely losing consciousness. He was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital where he was pronounced dead. On Wednesday, a medical examiner determined Neely's his death was a homicide. However, that does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a homicide. Okay, that's the stupidest bit of writing I've ever heard. As a murder, they mean. Homicide means death caused by person. It doesn't mean criminal. So what they're trying to say is, though the death was ruled a homicide, it does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a murder. That is up to the Manhattan DA's office, which is investigating. But I suppose I'm probably being a little bit too harsh because you can, they're not being clear. You can make the argument there's reckless homicide, there's negligent homicide. And so what they're saying is it's not clear that he will be criminally charged. They probably just should have said. They're going to say, as a part of our rigorous ongoing investigation, we will review the medical examiner's report, assess all available video and photo footage, identify and interview as many witnesses as possible, and obtain additional medical records, read a statement from a spokesperson for the DA. So we've got video coming out of New York. Protesters, I believe this was yesterday, were seen in the streets, and the police made some arrests. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but one of our reporters, Eliyahu, was physically assaulted by one of the protesters and had his property destroyed while he was in the process of doing journalism. But let's just get down to brass tacks here. There's going to be a lot of arguments about this one. This is a story of a guy who was having a mental breakdown. I guess the news that recently came out was that he was a subway performer and his mental health collapsed after his, I think his mom was killed, is what they're reporting. And after that, he kind of just lost it. And then he had been arrested 40 times. He had once punched a 6-7-year-old woman in the face. And so as he was belligerent on the subway, threatening people, saying that he was ready to die and he would hurt people, this is when the 3 men subdued him. reportedly the Marine told everyone to call 911 and get the police down there, and then he ended up dying, which has resulted in the left, like AOC, whether or not people, I don't know if you consider her left, but AOC,
Yeah, she's progressive.
she said this was a public murder. And now you've got protesters calling for this guy to be arrested. They're saying he committed a murder, and I think this is actually a really good example of what is described as anarcho-tyranny, in that you had 25 people pushed onto subway tracks in the past year. You've had like a woman get raped on a train in Philadelphia, and we don't hear a single peep from any of these politicians, from any of these activists, until someone actually stops the guy. If you go back to...
I mean, maybe that's true, but at the same time, I feel like the framing here is a little dishonest, because, like, politicians, there's more, I mean, like, I'm sure that there are politicians who talk about this stuff, just the ones that are notable and the more popular politicians are probably more choosy with who or what stories they like to address on their social media platforms for whatever reason. There's certainly people who talk about shit, though, you know?
He kills him, right? Kills him. He killed him. Sure, yeah.
So when someone is being violent and then someone else acts in self-defense of others and the person dies in the process, now there's all of a sudden calls for, okay, so this guy should be criminally charged, but there was no call for stopping the 25 people being pushed on subway tracks. That's an ongoing and acceptable thing, I suppose.
I'm never going to sit here and try to defend people pushing people on subway tracks. That's a crime. Like, that's terrible.
Attempted murder.
Yeah, exactly, especially if they die, so that's horrible. No one's going to be on the other side of that argument. But in terms of, like, the guy who just got killed, isn't, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, doesn't, in self-defense, the proportionality of what you're doing has to be in response to the actual aggressive actions of the person, right? It has to be proportional? Is that correct? So you feel in your mind that it was a proportional response for him to choke him out to death in that situation because he was going to become such a threat to the person who choked him out?
You made a big leap right there.
Which what was it?
You're ascribing intent to the Marine to kill.
Oh, I'm not saying he intended to kill him. I never said that, but he did end up killing him, right?
Well,
no, but what has to be material, Tim, has to be, is he doing what he's doing?
Proportionality argument, or are you making...
Yes, I'm asking you that because is what he did proportional to the threat?
Yes.
So the threat that he was going to do...
It is proportional to subdue someone that is threatening other people and saying he'll die in the process.
And end up killing them, even if that was...
See, now you're doing it again. You're ascribing intent.
No, I'm not ascribing intent. I'm saying the results. This is what happened. The guy's dead. He's dead.
Results are material to the proportionality of action.
So the proportionality of action in his actual...
Don't know about that.
Guy on the ground. Well, I said call 911.
And choke him out until he died.
You're doing it again.
No, you keep saying I'm doing it again. I'm saying this is the end results.
Okay, so I don't think so. There's obviously a disconnect in like there's a miscommunication going on here. I don't know whether it's because one of them isn't doing it effectively or if they're being intentionally obtuse. My understanding is that the Serfs is trying to just give the facts of the information here, like he died and that's what happened, and Tim is interpreting this as though he is ascribing intent behind it, and he might be deriving that from the basis of the legal definition of murder, but I don't think that's what the Serfs is like. I don't think that's what Lance is doing here. I think he's actually just like trying to recap the situation, I guess.
I'm not saying this is what he meant to do. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. Neither do you. None of us know what he meant to do that day when we woke up.
Absolutely. If someone is
he's gonna be a little, yeah.
And then would it be like an involuntary manslaughter?
So see,
no, but this is what happened. It's to the point of death. So you have.
It's not a criminal.
It's not. I'm not saying he intended to kill him. That's the difference, right? But if he ended up dying as a result of that, was that proportional?
Yes.
He needed to be killed.
No.
Or he could have killed someone else.
Hold on. Stop that. You keep trying to say needed to be. No.
But that's what happened.
The Marine.
That's the end result.
You're saying the Marine tried to kill him.
No, I didn't say that.
Then why would you say
that? You're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying that's what ended up happening.
Let me respond. Then why would you?
Because what he did to him, his chokeout ended up with the guy dying. So that was the end result. So
yeah, they need to be a little more charitable, I think. Tim needs to be a little more charitable and like chill out, I think. Hold on, let me just pull up. I need to pull up chat in case any of you fuckers out there want to disagree with me. All right, let's do it.
So his proportional response to what he thought was a threat was that I'm going to choke him out. I'm not trying to kill him, but I'm going to choke him out. Whether or not he dies is going to be something that we're just going to remain to be on the cards, right?
He needs to word it a little better. So I think he needs to say like, he's trying to incapacitate him, or he is trying to disarm him, or he is trying to de-escalate. That's what Lance should be saying to like kind of appeal to Tim here, I think.
Chance. We'll leave it up to chance.
So you are making a huge leap right there.
There's no leap, Tim. Yeah, what he's doing is that proportional. Is choking someone with the possibility of death. With the possibility of death.
Yes.
Okay, he thinks.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll tell you this. Let me tell you. So if someone tried illegally entering my home,
sure,
I will use whatever force necessary to stop them from illegally entering my home. Right? I have the legal justification in the state that I live in to use whatever force necessary to stop someone from entering my home illegally. Now, you can't invite someone in, and there's actually some legal barriers here. Like, if someone actually walks up to your house and the door is open and they walk in, that's actually not an illegal entry. It is to a certain degree, but it's like trespass. Sure. It's like your door was open, there was no obstruction, and then you'll make an argument about entering the domicile could be considered fourth-degree burglary, depending on which state you're in. If they actually open the door and enter, they've now committed felony burglary. And you are entitled in West Virginia to use whatever force necessary to stop someone from illegally entering your house. That doesn't mean you just intend to actually kill someone. So in terms of, we're out in the street, someone is threatening someone else. You are legally entitled to subdue them. Now,
even if that's even
yes.
in the act of doing that, you can kill them.
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Because where you're going with it is like, what act of subduing would be permitted in your mind then? Like holding his hands tightly?
One that doesn't have a possibility of death, I would say. Because if it's
Whoa, hold on. Anything has a possibility of death here. So, like, a chokehold, right? That can kill somebody, depending on how much force is applied. But sometimes, it's not lethal. It depends, again, it depends on how much force is applied. Yeah, I don't know.
Give me one in your martial arts expertise.
absolutely.
Okay, so there's
I think I can
Dude, what the fuck?
right?
Well,
Sorry, am I in a judo
I just
room?
watched a lot of movies.
no, but
Sharp elbows.
but no, none of us have black belts. We don't know this shit. We're just people who talk
but,
on the
but
internet,
now
right?
going black belt. I mean, I have hostile environment training, and I have some minimal martial arts training. Minimal. I've done some kung fu, taekwondo.
So there's
and
no experts here to
and
talk
capoeira.
about. Yeah.
So certainly will contend I am not an expert. However, if someone is threatening harm against another person, and 3 people find it reasonable to subdue him, and the person dies, that person was in the process of committing a crime. If you lose your life in the process of committing a crime, I'm not going to blame the victims for this, right? Would you blame the victims for this?
When you're saying victims, you mean the people who killed.
The people who are being attacked.
But were they attacked prior, or did they try to subdue them?
So-
do we have footage before? if it begins?
So in New York,
Yeah.
for example, if you go up to someone and threaten them, you've committed a crime, right? You've committed a criminal act of violence against another person by threatening them and going up to their face, right?
And so you're saying at that point you have the ability to proportionally respond with violence.
Yeah, actually.
Oh my god, the priming.
7 years ago, this man was called a hero for diffusing violence by putting another man in a chokehold. A man in the subway was getting up in people's faces, and he was threatening them, and another man got up behind him and put him in a chokehold, and he was put on national television.
Wait, that's the same guy?
As a hero for doing so. So this is what I'm talking about, anarcho-tyranny. I feel like you're latching onto this completely from point of.
It's a made-up
knowledge
term,
on
but-
other, technique for subduing an individual, nor
None of us do.
the legal expertise.
None of us do.
But see that's kind of an absurd thing to just outright. Well, look, I'm going to say this guy committed a murder and should go to prison, but I'm not an expert and neither are you, therefore he should be
I
convicted.
never said that. I'm actually asking questions because these are things that I don't fully understand about. Is it legal for him to do what he did?
Yes, that's why he
it is
wasn't charged.
proportionally legal.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why he wasn't charged, he was released. However, in this day and age, what's likely going to happen is anarcho-tyranny. People go out in the streets, they
What's that
protest,
mean?
they say for political reasons, we're going to go find this guy and we're going to arrest him.
But I don't know. It depends.
Anarcho-tyranny. And anarcho is a priest. It refers to anarchism, right? Tyranny is like I just don't under. Is this like an actual term? Maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know.
Unfortunately, we don't have footage of what happened before the chokehold.
That's what I'd like to know.
But if
Yeah.
there's enough people on the train that are witness to what was happening, they're like, yo, he was threatening all of us, then I
And
think
there
the
were.
cops are not going to mess with that.
And that's what was reported. And there were 3 men trying to subdue him as he fought back. So there's no debate that this guy was acting violently and threatening people, and even said he was prepared to die. At that point, you have what could be a terroristic threat. I think if a guy got on a train and
Terrorism. I hate to be like pedantic here, but terrorism is defined by violence committed off the basis of religion or or for political purposes. I don't know if that applies in this situation. Maybe it does. I don't know.
scream, I'm going to cause harm to people, and then said he was willing to die, you'd probably want to stop him because there's signs all over the subway saying if you see something, say something. Or I suppose we could go the route of when Luke Rutkowski had that video, there was a guy in the subway with a knife stabbing people, and the cop said, we're not going to get involved at all. And then some guy had to try and intervene himself. It's like, that guy's a hero.
Yeah, that was, I think, oh yeah, here it is. Matt Walsh retweeted Alexandria Cortez's tweet from 6 hours ago and asking specifically, what are they supposed to do? What are people supposed to do in this situation? Are they just supposed to sit there, if someone's screaming they're gonna hurt somebody? You just sit there and wait until they actually hurt the person and then you respond?
And I'm just curious, honest question. We have a story from the Daily Mail from October. 25 victims have been shoved in front of subway cars so far this year. 2 victims were killed. Where was the protest?
Well, where was the video footage of it?
There is video
There
footage of it.
Is it public?
Yes.
Public video footage?
And I can't play it on YouTube. But there's video footage of people being pushed in front of trains. And where's AOC? Where's any of these protesters? Nowhere to be found. Anarcho-tyranny is that when the criminals do it, as explained in, was it Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago? When a criminal does this act in the Soviet Union, they didn't. That's just criminal. That's what they do. But when you, the citizen, defend yourself, you knew better.
But so you're blaming AOC for not bringing attention to this specifically? So as in,
Blame?
or you're saying that
Criticizing.
she's hypocritical because she doesn't talk about the people being pushed in front of trains, but she's talking about this now? Is that what
I
you're
don't,
saying?
I'm not saying hypocritical. No, I'm saying I have a question of why now? Why only when people are victimized and they defend themselves are we now upset about what happened on the
He's saying
subway?
victimized. We're talking about a poor homeless person
Who
who
attacks
yes,
people.
may have been having an episode and died in what ended up being the struggle. But that's
Okay, it's important to recognize there are nuances associated with everything. So, for example, automatically, because we have seen in the news cycle countless times of people getting killed. Usually, the thing that makes the front page is like a black guy getting killed or strangled or whatever by a cop or somebody else, whatever. Now, this is politically this like sparks a lot of political conversations, but like it's important to always keep in like an understanding that there's a nuance to everything in life. So, for example, if the characterization Tim is providing regarding this situation is accurate, which it could very well not be. I'm not, and again, I don't want to like talk out my ass because I don't know I don't really know much about what they're talking, like this specific thing, right? But if that were the case, then it's important to have a more nuanced discussion about this, and it like just defaulting to he was probably mentally ill and blah 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 blah, and maybe that's relevant, sure, but like you have to meet them where they're at, like Tim Pool and his audience, because his audience is not like they know the talking points from like the left, right? So it's not I mean like you have to meet them where they are and try to like I don't know, like you need to this is complicated shit, right? So like just defaulting to your like the same dialogue that is trotted out time and time again is just it might not work here.
so. Why are the people who were subduing him victims? What makes them victims?
He assaulted them.
So you have that on camera that he assaulted them first.
According to all the news reports and the police and the witness statements.
Can we see the footage? I want to see. I haven't seen that yet.
I think we could show that.
Okay, so according to the news reports, the witnesses, and the police, he went and threatened violence against people, which is assault. and
Right, but
crime.
you're saying he specifically threatened violence against the people who subdued him. Do we have evidence of that?
I mean,
it's one thing for him to be in a train being like, I'm upset.
You're not winning an argument here.
I'm not trying to win an
You're
argument.
being
I'm
awfully
asking
pedantic.
Awfully pedantic.
Yes.
Why
Like,
would you use pedantic in this form? As in, like, I'm trying to get to the root of this problem.
no,
right?
it's absurd to imply that if a guy walks up to a woman and says he's going to harm her.
I don't think that's what
another man-
pedantic
Right,
means.
and so this is why I'm asking: did he say to the people who subdued him, "I'm going to harm you.
Yes,
I'm
that's
going to
immaterial.
hurt you"?
That's immaterial to a self-defense claim, proportionality.
Okay.
If this guy was threatening people, right, and then someone said, "I'm going to stop you before you hurt someone," that is legal self-defense acting in the defense of others. That makes those people who are,
Wait, hold on. What did he say exactly? Hold on 1 sec.
according to the news reports, the witnesses, and the police, he went and threatened violence against people, which is assault. And
Right, but
crime.
you're saying he specifically threatened violence against the people who subdued him. Do we have evidence of that?
I mean,
It's one thing for him to be in a train being like, I'm upset.
You're not winning an argument here.
I'm not trying to win an
You're
argument.
being
I'm
awfully
asking you.
pedantic.
Yeah, that's not what pedantic means. But that's not what I'm looking for. What did he say exactly?
Yes.
Why
Like,
would you use pedantic in this form? As in, like,
if-
I'm trying to get to the root of this problem.
no,
right?
it's absurd to imply that if a guy walks up to a woman and says he's going to harm her, that another man can't protect her.
Right, and so this.
Well, that never happens. Nobody goes up to another person and says, I'm going to harm you. It's usually, if they want to harm you, they're just going to do it, right?
This is why I'm asking: did he say to the people who subdued him, "I'm going to harm you"?
Yes,
I'm-
yes.
I'm-
Wait, hold on. Oh, God, this is why like nuance is so important. Okay, so technically, no, you don't have to necessarily say I'm going to harm you. You can demonstrate that you're going to harm somebody through nonverbal cues, and that is very subjective. Because what could be innocuous to one person could be threatening to another. So it has to be under reasonable presumption that self-defense was warranted.
I'm going to hurt you.
It's immaterial to a self-defense claim in proportionality.
Wait, didn't Tim just admit that that is relevant?
If this guy was threatening people, right, and then someone
But in what nature was he threatening them? Was he literally saying, I'm going to hurt you? If that's the case, then okay, self-defense is kind of warranted, but at the same time, if he's not doing anything and he's just saying, I'm going to hurt you, then that doesn't mean you should assault him, right? Like, I feel like physical defense should only take place if you are, like, actually, if the person is starting to swing at you. If they're just saying stuff, that's not the same thing.
One said, I'm going to stop you before you hurt someone. That is legal self-defense acting in the defense of others. That makes those people who are stopping the guy threatening people the victims of a violent individual who's trying to cause harm. I just find it fascinating that there's an...
It seems like there's a lot of information being left out here. Like, in what way was he threatening them? Did he throw the first punch? Like, what? I mean, like, again, I'm not saying, like... Like I said, I'm not, like, super familiar with the story, but I don't know.
An effort to defend the aggressor in this circumstance, right?
Oh, so you're suggesting that the guys, even if the guys that were choking out weren't the ones being threatened, that they're still considered a victim because they stepped in to defend other people?
Well, I'm saying outright that if you're on a train and there's a guy, you're on a train, you can't get off that train. You are trapped.
Yeah,
right?
I used to live in this area, by the way. I used to live in Flatbush. I used to take these trains every single day. I have seen this. I have seen this and worse. I've seen people in the middle of episodes where I was like, this person could potentially either harm themselves or harm me. It never crossed my mind that I need to choke them out to the point of potential death in order to protect everyone else.
That could very well be true, yeah. I mean, that's your experience, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there are other circumstances where somebody is going to be threatening. I mean, like, this is very subjective because, again, like, what we determine to be threatening or not is up to the individual to some degree.
Refrain, but never even mentioned about mine. So that's why I'm asking you, do you have specific footage of him threatening the very people who subdued and ended up killing him?
But why does that matter?
I don't think there is footage.
What is it?
Wait, it does matter.
To do with what I said. That's why I understand your
Because I would think that the proportionality being that you ended up killing them, even if that was not your intent, I understand that you don't think he intended to do that, fine. But even if that was it, were they, like, threats to him in the immediate, like, present? Were they on the verge of committing an act of violence towards him that required proportional violence that ended up in death?
But it's not a requirement someone threatens you for you to act in defense of others.
That's kind of true. Well, that is true, but at the same time, it depends on what your response actually entails. If it's actually assaulting somebody, that is dependent upon whether or not they are actually trying to assault somebody else. Them just saying, I'm going to hurt you, is not enough to me.
Right? So your question is kind of in an unnecessary direction. And I'll elaborate. If you're on a train and you're trapped in a box and someone is threatening violence,
yep,
then yeah, you're a victim. Because
so I've been a victim multiple times. Then. I was in these subways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the craziest thing to me.
I don't feel like a victim. I've never been hurt. I never was hurt by people who were going through those kind of
Other
episodes.
people have been.
I'm not saying they haven't.
You know,
I'm not saying this is a good
25
thing.
people were pushed in front of trains.
Okay, so these 25 people were pushed in front of trains. How is that directly related? Were these people also going through episodes? Were they also people who were homeless? Did they have mental illness?
I mean,
like,
I would say anybody.
And by the way, those are all relevant questions to ask. If somebody is mentally unwell, then that, to some extent, does remove a little culpability on their behalf because they aren't acting in a rational mindset. If they're of sound mind and they still threaten to hurt people, then the use of violence may be more inappropriate.
Having someone in front of a train at random is like going through an episode, you know what I mean? The correlation is that crime and murder on the subway has been increasing, or has at least been apparent in the press, but I don't see you caring about it at all, until it's the aggressor who gets killed.
No one, I think,
So?
on the left is willing to defend this static.
Then why put a guy in prison for finally saying, stop killing people?
This is like, Tim, if I approached you today and I was like, hey, do you know what goes on in Rikers Island? Have any of you done a show on what happens in Rikers Island? How they hold people in Rikers Island? Do you know what?
We not Rikers Island specifically, but we talk about prison reform all the time.
Okay,
and
do you know about bail reform and the fact that people die in Rikers Island waiting to have their day in court because they
Yes.
can't afford it?
And we talked about it.
And you've done
This is a-
on that, and you talked about how people literally
All right, we're kind of deviating from the central topic here. Yeah.
die in prison while they're waiting for that shit?
We talked
That's
about
terrible.
okay. So we actually talked about one guy who got wrongly arrested, lost his job, was kicked out of his apartment, went to Rikers for 3 months, only to be released and then told, sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. The city owes him nothing because they consider the prosecution not to be malicious. But this is the problem, man. Like, we talk about stuff like this all the time.
But
when
the example
this-
you just gave me was not me talking about the systemic problem of people who are poor being in Rikers Island before they get to trial. They die before they're not released. You just gave me a story of someone who was released
I'm
prior
giving you
to
an
that.
example of a specific show we've actually talked about someone wrongly held and had their life destroyed.
Okay.
Now, of course, we can go on further and say yes, people have died. Yes,
They
the
have.
system is corrupt. And my point is this: when we talk about stuff like this, like wow, in October we talked about 25 people being pushed in front of train cars. You guys just shit all over us and ignore these problems. Then finally, when three guys.
I told you, no one's on the other side of this. Nope.
Wait, was he who is he? Okay, just because people in his little bubble or like people he is used to seeing on his timeline don't talk about something doesn't mean people of that same or similar ideology aren't talking about it. Like, why is he painting with such a broad brush? Which is ironic because he's condemning, or rather trying to critique the left or liberals, whatever, for painting with a broad brush against people of his ideology. It's just seems kind of hypocritical.
No one is pro push people on the train.
Where's your protest? Where's your protest?
Where's my protest?
Yeah, where's your protest?
Where's your Rikers protest?
We had it on the show, but you don't watch
did a
the show.
protest? You did an actual protest. You guys stood up and
we
then walked to the
we
streets or
don't
what?
go on the street.
That's a weak
I'm
response
not-
from
I'm not-
Lance.
We're not talking about the Tim because this is the problem of like you are judging someone based on absence, based on your absence of caring about something. Why haven't you talked about this, Lance? The fact that you haven't talked about this means that you don't care about that.
That's not what I said.
true though.
That's not what I
That's
said.
the implication of what
No,
you're saying
no,
right now.
my implication is, instead of helping us deal with this when we talk about it, you make up garbage about us and then post nonsense on the internet.
What have I brought up garbage about people pushing people to trains? This is the most
I'm
random
not
example.
talking about you saying, I'm saying you don't talk about it, right? I'm not criticizing you for not talking about it. I'm saying finally, when there are people who are like, we've had 25 people pushed in front of trains, we've had 2 of them killed, I'm not going to let this person hurt something.
Does he actually care about this? Like, Tim Pool, does he actually care about people getting pushed in front of trains? Or is it just a talking point he can trout out to, like, get a little dunk here? It seems like such a very specific, like, thing, you know what I mean? And, like, for him to, like, get outraged over it to the point where he's trying to just, like, apparently decry hypocrisy or whatever against, like, it seems like he doesn't actually care and is instead just using it as a means of scoring, like, these points, you know what I mean?
Somebody, it's y'all saying that person should go to prison. It's like, how is that solving the problem? You guys are making it worse. Your protests, your support for the
You
criminals
guys.
make this worse.
So our solution to this, if you're asking, when you're saying you mean the left, right? Our solution to a lot of this
You're speaking in support of the criminal, so I'm saying you.
Okay, so I am saying that the solution to a lot of this would be investing
Awesome.
very heavily in things like healthcare. Ensure that
Weak
people have access to
response.
the restrictions, like allowing people to have access to healthcare, not as a requirement based on how much money they have, based on their income, but allowing them to get the care.
The
they
same
need. That will go a
talking
long way
points.
to prevent a problem like this and future problems that are going to happen. I have no idea what's going on with the 25 people who've been pushed in front of trains. If it happens to be because people have mental illness, this is a tangible solution that we can work towards. This is something that are you against that idea about investing heavily into mental health care, public health care? Well, then, there you go. That's a much better line.
So here's
right?
my issue. My issue is when this story came out in October, we talked about it. And we said, why is this happening? What are the solutions? What are the problems? When this story comes out now, you, completely ignorant of what's been going on in New York, side with the criminal. And so people like me are flabbergasted that we've been focused on the issue of crime, the issue of mental health, the entire time, going back several years.
Because
And this is why I left New York. Because
He's, like, taking it personally.
And then what do we hear? Protesters in the street defending the criminal.
I have a problem with criminalizing people who are homeless or people who are poor or people who are mentally ill. And then suddenly,
I'm not saying he's a criminal for being poor. I'm saying he's a criminal because he's threatening people with harm. Like incitement to violence is a crime, just like AOC says, right?
I really want to see this video footage. I want to see the moment where he was threatening the very people who tried to take
Yeah,
him down.
but look, either you accept that the witnesses, the media, and the police say this is what happened, or we can agree. No one has any idea, so there's no point even talking about it.
I think the interesting maybe confluence is that you were mentioning preventative measures are a way to go about it. What do you think about defensive measures? Like people should be armed and ready for this kind of thing, regardless of the prevention methods.
I mean, when it comes to defensive measures and people should be armed, I'm going to probably be on the exact opposite as the rest of you. Because you're probably very pro-gun, right? I'm just making, yeah. We don't have the same problems in Canada.
Dude, come on! Oh my god. That is an awful... Why did he say that? That could have been such, like, a wedge thing you could have, like, found a little common ground with. Be like, yeah, you know, I think it's fine if people, like, want to, you know, like, I have nothing against people owning firearms. I just think it should be done responsibly. I think that people who are mentally unwell shouldn't have access to firearms. I think that you need to be a certain age. And, like, just, like, the more common sense shit. Oh, no.
In the United States for mass shootings, for mass gun violence, that kind of stuff.
You have 30 million people, though. Is it 30 million?
Okay, so by ratio of the population term. So if you compare ratio of the population, Canadians to America, we don't have mass shootings like you do. No one else does. It's a uniquely American problem.
The same talking points.
Well, it's... I don't think it's fair to say...
Okay, so here's the problem. He's using, like, common fucking talking points, and that's not gonna work, because, like, Tim is smart enough to recognize them and have answers for them directly. You need to, like, get at the heart of the matter, instead of, like, memorizing shit.
Uniquely American because there are mass shootings in many other countries.
Oh, there is, but it's a uniquely American problem that it's disproportionately happening here.
Well, mass killings aren't a uniquely American problem, but mass killings done with the use of firearms is much more uniquely American. I don't think anyone's going to debate that countries that have fewer firearms are going to have fewer people killing each other with firearms. It then becomes a moral
Australia has
question of what
more
is.
per capita than the United States? Is that
More
right?
per capita?
That is not true. No
I just
country comes
looked up
close to the United States.
List of countries by... No, okay, I'm sorry.
It might be true.
That was a mistake.
Sorry,
El
Australia.
Salvador,
And when
Venezuela.
you're correct-
Yeah, so,
Yeah, so
is it
we're-
right if I just finish my thought? Yeah, yeah. So my basic point
Yeah, that was
is,
way off. The United States is not the most. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yes, and so of all the other countries in that list, which of them are considered part of the G20? You have to compare countries that have similar
What?
economic systems, similar economic societal structures. The United States places number 1 when you compare them to any other G20 country.
yeah, no, so
Yeah.
it's true that as far as developed nations go, the United States does have a much higher rate of gun violence. I don't deny that. My argument is simply that other nations do have higher rates, depending on the nation that you're looking at. There is still a pretty decently high homicide rate in a lot of developed countries, and there are a lot of mass killings.
That's
In the
not gonna
United
work.
States, those mass killings are generally carried out with firearms, but according to CDC studies, firearms are used to prevent more violent crimes each year than they're used to commit. So it's a much more complex argument than simply saying the U.S. has more firearm deaths, therefore restricting firearm ownership would prevent those.
Let me ask you too. Do you know what
Right, which is why this is a nuanced conversation, and maybe memorizing talking points isn't going to work.
country has the most grenade attacks?
I only know the answer because I said type in Sweden,
I
right?
actually didn't type that. I searched.
By the way,
I would
decently
have no
high
idea.
murder rate was a very clumsy.
I don't want to cheat, so I saw you typing it, but yeah.
I did
so
not. I
didn't know that.
didn't type in Sweden. I
Okay.
typed in most grenade attacks by country, and Sweden is the only thing that comes up. And yeah, Sweden has more grenade attacks than any other country.
Oh,
but
shoot.
Grenades are illegal there.
Okay. I've got a feeling.
Why are there grenade
Oh,
attacks?
okay.
in
So,
Sweden?
yeah, I would love to answer this question. So, if we're going back to guns and the U.S. versus Canada, when I said that there's G20, if we look at all the G20 countries, the United States disproportionately by ratio of the population has way more gun deaths, way more gun violence. And a lot of that gun violence, by the way, is people killing themselves. Just to be completely clear.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
if you look at it in the framework of Canada has a very different set of rules for firearms than the United States does. You can still have a firearm in Canada. You just have to take a 2-day course and you get a license, and then you get gun training, and then you have the ability to buy guns. And that way, everyone has a license. They know how to use firearms properly. They're not just going to be running around the streets, pointing to them, and then all that kind of shit. And you can also control for that.
But that's not what's happening in the United States.
No, I'm not saying that it is. But I'm saying that that is in my opinion that is a better system. I'm not trying to take your guns away. Hell no. I think guns
Take your guns away. That's not a good thing to say.
I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, if you look at how it works with Canada, this could be applied to the United States federally. You could have a program, a federal program, where you have to have a 2-day gun training program. You tax the gun producers and the weapons manufacturers, and then you
But
get them
you
to pay
can't.
for it, so poor people could afford this program.
But you can't do that because gun ownership is a constitutional right. Or I should say, gun ownership is a human right, guaranteed, protected against
a
government
government.
infringement.
I'm all about training in schools. I think the public schools should have gun training for kids.
Like they used to.
They used to,
Absolutely, yeah. Gun clubs.
I would highly advocate for more training, but you're just suggesting that you can't force it on people.
The Constitution, clearly, and according to the writings of the Founding Fathers and to, I think, Heller versus D.C., gun ownership is a human right, and the Constitution protects against...
Okay, I literally don't give a shit what the founding fathers thought about guns. Also, back in the day, they had fucking muskets, okay? Like, yeah, it's, like, not machine guns. This is such a stupid argument. I never understood, like, the whole, like, well, the founding fathers said... Like, why should I give a fuck what they thought? I don't give a fuck. Insofar as it's relevant is how we should, or not even should. I'm not even going to grant that premise. Some people will use the founding fathers as a means of, like, trying to, like, interpret the Constitution appropriately, and, like, the interpretation of the Second Amendment and stuff like that, but, like, okay, I don't give a fuck what they thought. Like, the Constitution was designed to be a living document, and as such, we should treat it that way. Which means that over time, things change and interpretations of things change as well, so, yeah.
against government infringement of that right. That being said, we got the NFA, we got the updates to the NFA in the 80s, so certainly gun rights have been infringed to an absurd degree. You know, not to mention,
Absurd.
back in the days when they codified the Constitution, people owned warships privately, and Halliburton, Northrop Grumman, well, I shouldn't say Halliburton, they're a construction thing, but Northrop Grumman, Boeing, etc. These companies are private companies that build nuclear weapons. So we basically where we're at right now is that private corporations with no accountability can have the most powerful weapons of mass destruction in the world, but them and the government, and it doesn't follow. Either the people have the power or they don't have the power, right? We've advocated it to corrupt organizations.
It's not really that black and white, because people can have some power, but they can have limited power in other respects, right? Like, you can have ownership of firearms, but there are some restrictions on said firearms. It's not black and white.
Corporations are not people. This regarding this dude that choked the guy out, I think what's going to come up is was it adequate force or was it too much? And I feel like if he had punched the guy directly in the face, that would have been worse. Because although if they got no fist fight, because he could have fallen backward and hit his head. At least he was in control of the guy's body. It's really sad that the guy died, but I feel like this was like a very low level amount of force to apply to someone that was threatening to kill people and hurt people.
Why did 3 people find it necessary to
He
try
was
and
probably
stop this guy?
flailing and kicking and screaming, you know, who knows?
So it is hard because you mentioned there's no footage prior, but something happened that resulted in 3 New York people who are likely not conservatives to decide this man must be subdued. 3 people. So when it comes to the idea of proportionality, I'm like, if 3 New Yorkers of all people were like, this guy's got to be stopped, that's kind of crazy to me because, look,
This is a bit oversimplistic. There are some, believe it or not, I know this is shocking, but there are some New Yorkers who are also conservative. That is, and also their political ideology has nothing to do with their propensity to disarm somebody who is being threatening. What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
I'm a gun nut, right? My
Also, many liberals are also pro-gun. They're just more, they're more likely to be in favor of certain restrictions on the access of firearms.
My view is people have a right to defend themselves with a lot more force than people in New York do. But if people in New York felt they could stop him, these people, I doubt these guys are conservative. There's like no conservatives living there. It's like 20% Republican, and if they are Republican, they're probably
Oh my god, their political ideology has nothing to do with this. What the fuck is he talking about?
moderate, right? Something must have happened. But I don't even need to sit here and say what could have or what must have. What we know, what we choose to believe, based on what the police, the media, and the witnesses
What we choose to
is
believe.
that this guy was threatening people with violence and said he was prepared to lose his life over it. Three men then said this man must be subdued, and they subdued him. And then the guy died, which sucks. It's unfortunate.
Did it get a cause of death?
It was a compression of the neck. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So you've got a massive platform here. A lot of people watch you all the time, and so what you
Uh-oh.
say obviously advocate for
Uh-oh.
affect a lot of people's lives. If this is a problem that genuinely concerns you, why isn't it something that you would frame and want to advocate for more resources for mental health access and bring that up on a regular basis? And I'm not saying, and I'm sure, okay, hold on, Tim. I'm sure you've done it before. I'm sure you've had
We do
specials
a lot.
before. I'm what?
We do a lot.
Okay. Why isn't that the focus? Why isn't today, hey, by the way, everybody, this horrifying tragedy happened on the New York subway. We got to talk about this.
Yeah.
Here's our angle. Our angle is we need to invest in mental health. We need to invest in giving access to public health care for Americans.
I think Lance is doing an okay job trying to direct the conversation in the appropriate way, but it's coming off punitive, or not punitive. It's coming off kind of like what's the word? I don't know the appropriate word for this. It seems like he's like, I don't know. Like it's like coming off more like he's trying to get a dunk or something. Sorry about the camera, by the way. Not much I can do about that except buy a new one.
First of all, when it comes to the issue of violence in this country, conservatives have been screaming about mental health for decades.
Reagan is one of the ones that gutted the institutions.
Wait,
I mean,
what?
Reagan's one of the worst presidents this country's ever had. No fault.
Wait, dude. Conservatives, of all people, have not been in favor of addressing mental health at all. Actually, so much so that I don't remember when it was, but like not even that. I think it was around Uvalde, but there was a mass shooting, obviously, at the Uvalde kindergarten or elementary school, or whatever. And soon before that, Greg Abbott, who is the governor of Texas, was defunded resources for mental health services. So conservatives don't give a fuck about mental health. It's just used as a talking point to obfuscate from common sense gun laws.
Divorce. How about that?
Yeah,
shit?
no,
Gun control.
yeah.
I don't know why Republicans like that guy.
The reason that they like him is because of the way that he stood up to communism, but I totally agree that he had a lot of really bad policies about how to stand.
But conservatives have taken the stance of gun violence and mass shootings is an issue of mental health. And then the left takes the opposing.
But do they invest in that? Do they vote for it?
Well, of course not. The Republican Party's garbage.
When I look up the votes of the Republican Party, they're not voting for amendments that are actually going to give people more access to mental health.
But look, man,
But that's where you have an opportunity.
But you don't want to come onto a show where we say the Democratic and Republican Party should be dismantled and obliterated, and then make an argument that one side is bad. I'll sit here and be like, bro, if you want to have make a list of every single member of Congress who should be removed from office, I will put all of them but like 4.
One problem is that when people advocate for mental health, a lot of that advocation is more drugs. That this new drug will fix your brain, but I'm of the belief that less drugs allow you to fix your sometimes.
It really depends on what you're talking about. So, for example, depression. Like, there are things that you can do that aren't, like, prescribed by pharmaceutical industries that can, like, definitely help in alleviating some of the symptoms associated with depression. But, antidepressants, and, like, again, this is really dependent upon the person, too. But, like, for the most part, I think that the, drugs that are prescribed by pharmaceutical industries have been largely beneficial to people. Now, don't get me wrong, there are instances where people are overprescribed painkillers and shit like that, and that's definitely an issue. However, I think the statement that it's better to have less drugs, or whatever the fuck he said, like, he is of the belief that less drugs is better, like, that's really variable.
for very short periods of time, you might need something to help, but then you don't want people long term. I don't want them on psycho, crazy pharmaceuticals that make them go,
Right.
Well,
and we have to bring up often this medication actually increases suicidal ideation and aggressive thoughts and things like that. But I do want to answer.
Again, it depends on the person, and also depends on how much they're taking and all that shit. This isn't black and white, dude. This shit's fucking complicated.
Why isn't that the subject of like the show today?
Or the premise, or the framing.
Right. Because when we do talk about this stuff on like a normal day, when news breaks of like 45 people pushing on trains, or a woman was raped on a train in Philadelphia, and we're sitting here saying like, what is going on in these cities? What are the failed policies that are resulting in this? We talk about it all the time. Today, we're talking about the fact that protesters went out in New York and physically assaulted one of our friends and reporter because he simply filmed them, and they are demanding criminal charges of the guy who tried to stop the violent offense. See, that is a narco-tyranny. That when you have ongoing crime, when you have victimization, people being killed, and a woman being raped on a train, we talked for a year, 2 years, 3 years. When the riots happened in 2020, we had Michael Tracy reporting, showing all the riots across the country. And the
Michael Tracy, that one.
Non-stop. And then, one day, someone on a train, 3 guys, say, we must stop this. Maybe because they were like, we've seen too many people die on these train tracks before. And now we've got leftist protesters saying that guy should go to prison for it. And AOC calling it a public murder. I'm like, yo, AOC, I didn't see you call out the public murder in the subway trains. And again, maybe it's ignorance. But the problem I see is, this is why I refer to the left as NPCs or a cult. There's complete ignorance to the problem ongoing, and then a hyper-polarization in a single moment in the wrong direction, which makes the problem worse.
You know what's so wild is the other side feels the exact same way.
Except we're not conservatives. Except we're not conservatives.
You're not conservative, yet you seem to you happen to align with many of the ideology, talking points, and framings and perspectives of the conservative. That's interesting.
You see, that's the problem.
Is it alright if I jump in with something, right? Because I've been reluctant.
He's a conservative. He's a moon lord, and how much?
I've been reluctant to interject because I don't want to just dogpile, and so I didn't want to get in on it.
Oh no, I'm
huge
here
part of that
for
argument.
the dogpile. I
Signed. You're not. I promise.
I'm
I promise you're not.
right? This is where Yates after Yates. No, I'm here for the dogpile.
So
I promise you're not.
I think when you talk about mental health and trying to solve the problem of mental health in this country, that is a deceptively simple way of putting it. Right? Every single person in this room would have a very different idea of how that problem should be solved. And I agree with you that right now Republicans aren't doing a whole lot to talk about mental health issues, at least with respect to whatever mental health issue that this specific person is dealing with.
Wait.
But that's because
New York is not a Republican place.
No. I totally agree with that too. But I'm saying he was saying, why don't Republicans do more to advocate for mental health treatment? My point, however, is that I think the kind of advocacy you'd see from conservatives on how to solve the problem of bad mental health in the United States would be a much different set of policy prescriptions than you would want.
Well, their policy prescriptions revolve around defunding resources that exacerbate existing mental health issues. So, yeah.
So one example of this, right?
Actually, what Ian said.
And so what Ian said. And there's a number of different directions you can take this in. My fundamental belief is that we live in a culture that encourages man to live in ways that man is not meant to live, and you just see negative health outcomes from that, both mental and physical. However, when you look at traditional psychological definitions of mental illness and how we used to treat it, back in the 1950s, you had about 500,000 people in the United States in insane asylums. By the 1980s, it's about 100,000.
Yeah, I wonder what happened between those 2 periods of time. Wow. Ooh. What happened between 1950 and 1980?
Okay, so without even adjusting for the increase in population size, there's a significantly lower number of people who are committed. And part of that is because the requirement to get somebody committed involuntarily to a mental health facility at that time was they can't take care of themselves. Today, they have to demonstrate that they are a danger to themselves and others first before they can be committed. Now, is someone not being able to take care of themselves necessarily the perfect indicator of whether they need to be committed to one of these institutions? I have no idea. However, what I do know is once we push the goalpost all the way in the other direction and say they have to demonstrate that they are a significant danger to themselves or others, oftentimes they don't get committed until after they've already hurt somebody. So it's a much more complicated situation than saying we just have to throw more money at this system when we don't even have a solid definition of what good mental health is and also at which point someone should be committed.
So I think the important point, going back to
definitely need a dog park.
I agree. This is not a conservative show, but if you are in a cult,
sure,
you wouldn't know that. You would only hear what the cult says.
So here's what I have to respond to that. If an objective person, say an alien, just showed up and looked at your channel, Tim, and went through all the videos, and you were to ask them, is this person and his views, where would you place them? Most likely they would say conservative. That's going to be my bet. Yes.
But more because the guests that come on.
Not just even the guests, but the way they're framed, the thumbnails, the words that you put in red, and the
But yeah, doesn't he say there's going to be a civil war and shit? And he's been saying that for years. Oh shit. Yeah. Also, his attitude against, his attitude with progressive people in Congress has been mostly negative. And and by the way, I don't really see him talking. I mean, it seems like a lot of his content is concentrated against progressivism. In addition, he's also has issues with like trans people, or not even the people, but like rather the trans healthcare. He takes issue with that as well.
Whether or not you're supporting or going against one, either the Democrats or Republicans, but hey, you tell me that you guys don't like the Democrats and you don't like the Republicans. It's not a Republican stream. You don't want to endorse Republicans in any way, shape, or form, or vote for them.
I don't.
It's hard to believe.
Okay, sure, but there's a lot of right-wingers who watch you, right? So that's what I mean when I say you do have a voice and you do have an audience of right-wingers who are going to vote. At one point or another, 30% of your audience is right-wing.
Most of the people who watch this, the largest faction is libertarian.
Okay.
The next largest would be considered traditional liberal. Oh, no.
Wait, what is... Okay.
I think...
but along party lines, who are the libertarians going to vote for? Not the Libertarian Party. Most likely they're going to vote for whoever.
When they come on this show and say abolish the police.
One of the two, Republican or
Yeah,
Libertarian.
most likely, yes, one of the two. So that's why I say, Tim, for the people who watch you who are Republican leaning, why not bring it that way for them so that they can actually start pushing more money into that?
That's why I'm here.
That's
Basically true, I think.
that's what Moonlord does.
So here's what I think. I think you're in a cult, right?
Okay.
I think the cult is derived from algorithms on social media. So you only surround yourself with this loud noise. We saw a really good example of this with that Sisson.
But wait, that's the case for... Oh, sorry. What is... There's over that. So he's not necessarily wrong here. It is true that when you are when you have certain things that you look up on social media, those things can often show up in your timeline. And as such, you are more likely to get into this echo chamber. That's definitely true, but at the same time, framing it as though it's a cult is a little inaccurate, because I mean, like, I just feel like we need to be a little more careful with the terminology that we're actually using, and not just throw things out to sound scary or to like paint a certain like narrative.
Guy, is that his name? Harry
Sisson, yeah.
Those two guys went on the Tim Dillon podcast, and he said, "Please, no, don't click this. I will lose followers." I can rag on Trump all the time, and like people still watch the show. Seamus and I can have an argument over me being pro-choice and him being pro-life, and people still watch the show. And if I pull up all sides with 3,770 ratings, Tim Pool is a centrist. But you think I'm conservative because you live in a bubble, right?
So I'm too far left, you have two too far away. Is what you're
yes.
saying?
So like when I go hang out in Washington D.C.,
right.
and I go to National Harbor or I go to Baltimore, Maryland. I'm in Baltimore.
I don't know why you
places.
do that in Washington D.C.
The people who come up to me and are like, "Hey man, I'm a big fan," are not conservatives. They hate Donald Trump. In fact, I was at a poker table last week, and the guy said, "I just hate Donald Trump. Man, I can't stand him. I wish somebody else would run, but I can't vote for Joe Biden." I think you're surrounded. We talk about this quite a bit.
Sure.
If all sides has nearly 4,000 people rating me, and the end result is centrist. If I'm actively pro-universal health care, not to the same degree as like Bernie Sanders, I believe in private health insurance, and I'm pro-choice, I am absolutely not a conservative in this country.
I've listened to your debate from pro-choice. Pro-choice from a perspective. I
I'm
would say,
pro-choice from a traditional liberal perspective, as
but
traditional
not
liberals have
from
been.
what people who define themselves as pro-choice would say, right? Like you concentrate very heavily
Right,
on the 9th-month abortions and baby guillotines and stuff like that. Like,
What?
Yeah. I remember watching the
Baby guillotines?
Yeah. Okay, so baby guillotines is my own personal interpretation of joke.
Oh, no.
How like disgusted you are that women may have an abortion in the 9th month, right? Or even
A viable baby.
of a viable baby.
That could-
and I wanted to scream at that time. Being like,
That's not okay, this is gonna be a hot take. Ready? I don't think it's unreasonable to take issue with somebody getting an abortion at like the 9th month. I think the only circumstance in which that is probably okay. I don't think like there should be anything restricting a woman's ability to get an abortion, but like I think that if you're getting an abortion at 9 months and your life is not in danger, that seems kind of weird. But again, that doesn't really happen. Most abortions take place in the first trimester, so.
like women who have abortions in the 9th month, they're not doing that because they got bored, or all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't care anymore. They do that because it's a fucking tragedy. Like statistically, women who are getting abortions in the 9th month is because there's a medical complication
Okay, that's correct.
that could kill them. That's why they have to do it.
False argument.
Wait, did he just say that's a false argument? Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure I'm right. Most women who get abortions in the 9th month, a large proportion... First off, it's like 8%. So, like 91% of abortions take place in the first trimester. In the last month, if and when they get an abortion, it is like for medical reasons, right? It's not because it's inconvenient.
I already said viable. Try again.
What are you talking about, Tim?
I already said abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months.
This is
Do you know what viable means?
So wait, he's literally fixating on of the proportion of abortions that take place. He's fixating on like the 0.1% of them that includes a woman getting. So like he's already framed the conversation in a way that he can't lose. Basically, he's framing it in ways like I have an issue with women who get abortions in the 9th month and the baby is viable, and there's no medical issues taking place. Well, okay, that's probably bad. Like, why are you fixating on like such a very small percentage of abortions that take place? It's kind of weird.
Yes,
It means the baby can survive on its own without medical complications.
Absolutely.
Oh wait, and also it's worth noting, I don't know if this is true because he hasn't really made a distinction yet, but Tim, like, a complication can happen to the mother. It's not just about the fetus, right? Like, if there's a complication, if it's a viable fetus, but there's something happening with the mother that can harm her or be potentially life-threatening, I don't know if those are mutually exclusive.
And
Why
the women
legalize
and the
abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months when the baby could just be
women are
delivered?
not getting abortions at the 9th month for pleasure or because they want to suddenly do it for kicks. No, that doesn't happen.
That's true.
Why
It's a
legalize?
tragedy. It's a
legalize?
tragedy
Why
of the
legalize?
highest
Why legalize?
because there are medical operations
I didn't hear what he said, unfortunately.
that could kill the mother, and they need to get an abortion.
Wait, where is this
Legalize.
issue?
I just told you that's the reason why.
So all right, I'll try to break it down for you. Can the baby survive? Let's talk about a baby. The baby can survive on its own, yes?
Sure.
Okay. Abortion is defined by Planned Parenthood and the law as terminating the life of the baby.
Correct.
Why terminate the life of the baby if it can survive on its own?
Because it can kill both of them. That's why it is done at that stage.
So
It
how
could
do you
kill
how do
one
you-
or the
how do you
other,
get
and they
the-
have to
yeah.
make a tough decision
And
at
how
that
do you-
point.
So how do you remove the fully formed 9-month baby at that point?
Oh, I don't know the science of it. I haven't heard before that operation.
So should
Wait, why are we fixated on such a small... Again, I don't understand why we're fixated on the very small percentage of abortions that take place at the 9th month, and also take place when the baby's viable, and also take place when the life of the mother is not threatened. I have no idea why we're boxed into this weird, very hyper-specific situation.
shouldn't the law then be, if the baby must be removed and it is alive and capable of survival, all actions must be taken to preserve the life of the child and the mother?
I would say they'd probably choose the mother first, right?
Why?
And this is such a strange thing.
Oh, here's where the divergence is going to take place.
How often do you think that this happens, and all of a sudden they're like, the baby could have lived. You could have done it. Why did you choose the other option? It's like, this is a tragedy of the highest order because they want to have the kid. At 9 months pregnant, a woman is on her way to give birth. So it's like, it's the worst possible fucking
I'm
thing that
sorry,
can happen to her.
that's not a, again. I said I didn't want to dogpile,
No,
but that's
but-
I mean that's statistically not true. There have been surveys done on women who had later abortions, and for a pretty
Wait, statistics done. Okay. How many of them got later... First off, what does late-term abortion actually mean? Does it mean the 3rd trimester? Does it mean the 9th month? Does it mean a couple days before they're due? So that's the first thing. Second thing, that doesn't... What statistic? Like, what are you saying? Like, what source? Like, what did they measure? Like, what... Okay.
some of them it's because they were not sure whether the father
Some of them.
was willing to commit, and then when they found out he wasn't willing to commit, they would have the abortion.
Yeah, that seems kind of fucked up. It sounds very unfortunate, but yeah, I don't know. That's pretty fucked up. But again, like, we're focused on such a small sliver of, like, total abortions. Like, it's just weird.
And so there are different stats you're going to find for different points in pregnancy. When it comes all the way along to 9 months, I don't have the statistical data on that. However, I do know for later-term abortions, there are reasons other than what is traditionally considered to be a medically necessary reason. For example, some people will say that a negative mental health outcome is a reason to abort a child later in pregnancy. So if a woman is depressed, they will list that as a reason for why the child...
Wait, a negative health outcome? Is that what I said? Yeah, that's kind of dependent, right? Like, that. What do we mean by that, even? You know, like...
child had to be terminated to save the life of the mother, which is certainly not the case, very obviously. And to the point of what Tim is saying, when we say there's no such thing as a medically necessary abortion, the principle behind that is if there is an operation which is necessary to save the life of the mother, and then she miscarries the child as a result of that operation, which was necessary to save her life, that's not an abortion because nobody's intent was to go in there and end the life of the unborn child. And so if a woman's having complications where she has to deliver early, you deliver the child early, of course. And if you're at a point in pregnancy where the child isn't viable, that's a horrible tragedy. You still do what you can to save the child, but you can't always save the child, and we understand that. But to go in and rip the child apart to end their life is never something which is medically required, even though an early delivery...
Wait, hold on. That's not true. What does it mean by never... Again, I hate to be, like, very specific, but it's really important that we are. Sometimes it is medically necessary to have a late-term abortion. So, using the terminology, it is never okay is kind of... It's I don't know if it's, like, a Freudian slip from him, or if he's trying to, like, sneak it in there. But, like, no, there are circumstances where having a late-term abortion is justified. Although it's unfortunate, it is justified. Again, however, and I would like to reiterate this, this really doesn't happen that much. Like, most abortions take place in first trimester.
Maybe.
Well, are there situations where if the baby is in, this is so harsh, in its complete form, that even trying to induce early pregnancy could kill the mother, so they have to break the baby's body apart so that they can get it out without killing the mother?
I've never heard of such a thing.
So-
And there are letters, by the way, signed by literally thousands of doctors. who have
So
said this.
let me ask. Let me ask.
Wait,
you
can I
this.
just say one thing? So 88% of abortions are in the first 12 months. 88% of abortions. Less than 1.3% of abortions take place near the 8 or 9.
How many
Is
abortions?
that good, Mocker?
Well, how many?
I don't know the actual numbers. This is the percentages.
13,000.
Okay, but we're talking about less than 1.3%.
Hold on, 13,000. That's the number of people who died from gun violence in the U.S. each year that aren't suicides.
Gentlemen,
so that's
I am not here
13,000.
to justify abortion when it happens as in it's a
But
good
you're
thing.
saying, no,
I don't celebrate
brother,
it.
you're saying it doesn't happen.
No,
You're saying
I
it
never
doesn't
said it
happen.
doesn't
13,000 times.
I said it's extremely. There is 338 million Americans. I'm sorry. The numbers are going to be a little daunting. Yes, the numbers will be high. I'm not here to celebrate
I
that.
don't understand your argument then.
My argument is that
if
there's a lot of human
13,000
beings.
people die from guns, we have a problem, right? If 13,000
So now they're trying to do the whole gotcha, like, oh, you're okay with this yeah. So this was like this really does come off to me like as like trying to really go for the gotcha in those clips, right? Like, oh, you say this is okay, but not when this happened. Like, yeah,
1,000 people.
it's not really a good look in my
13,000
opinion.
late-term abortions happen. Is that a problem?
These are completely different things.
Well, how so?
Okay, so if someone dies by gun and they've been shot, were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it suicide? Was it a gang violence thing? Who
that's-
knows?
that's a good question.
Can I clarify? I don't wanna argue, I just
Hold
wanna
on,
clarify.
I need to answer this.
Well,
In the case
not-
of
not
late,
address
yeah,
what
but
you just
yes,
said.
but in the case of late-term abortions, more often than not, when statistics say and when they are polled, they say the reason that they are giving it is because it's a medical complication that could result in the death of the mother and the child.
So let's. Can we make the argument then that the use of guns on people are allowed
The use of guns and people are
to end their lives is allowed?
so
You
that's
make that
murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No, I said
or death.
not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months because it only happens according to the stats based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to.
No.
She should have a right.
No, that's that's not a good response. Oh no, man. You gotta. Unfortunately, you're in a position where you kind of have to commit to a position, and priming it the way you are comes off weaselly.
Colorado legalized abortion up in 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with
I agree with that position.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
It's not a trick question. You're
No, I know,
allowed to believe
but
that.
I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason, they could just decide that they're
Elective,
bored.
yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
Wait, and that's also isn't that like pretty expensive to like do a C-section and then like do adoption? And what if somebody doesn't like? What are you gonna do with the baby in the meantime? I mean, maybe I'm not familiar with the whole fucking. Like, I don't know how the whole process plays out. To be fair, but like, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's just more convenient to get an abortion.
It does. But hold on. Like
You might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
But hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Wait, hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it?
Well,
And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own body.
We're not-
no.
We're talking about 9 months,
He's
even if
so
it's still a
bad.
body, even if it's a viable
We're
baby,
talking
it's still
about
a
the
body.
removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or
Forceful.
so she chooses to have that. She
The
should have the
woman
right.
says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removed?
I don't think they should do that. I would. If
you
they
think
ask
it's
me,
illegal?
Lance, should I do this? I would say no. But she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't
listen.
stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own, and she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is again the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up.
But-
what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
He's not answering the question, which
if the
comes
argument
off
is that it doesn't happen under
bad.
preventative care. That's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that can survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with pregnancy, she doesn't have anymore, but the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
Bodily
the
autonomy
baby-
doesn't stop
the
at my
baby-
morality. Tim,
the baby
it's
is
not
being
my
removed,
choice.
right?
It's not my yes, but that's not
Why
my choice.
kill it? Why
But
kill it?
that's her choice, not mine.
Why kill the baby?
Ask her. Ask her.
Okay, so my point is simply this. You don't need to be shocked by it. You're allowed to have that moral position. I think most people in America would prescribe that to be, would ascribe evil to that.
That's
The
your-
idea
you can
that
ascribe evil to whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your choice.
the idea that you would say
Doesn't mean that she
the
should legally
woman
be
wants the
restricted.
baby removed, and then in the process, instead of letting the baby live, remove it but kill it, right? There's no reason to do that. There's no. You can give the baby up for adoption. You can drop the baby off on the doorstep of a post office.
I agree with you. I'm not
So
disputing
why
that.
legalize? Even if it's one, why legalize? You see, this is the craziest
Because
thing.
her autonomy should not be cut off based on your morality. Because you don't think that idea is good. You don't like
But
it.
the baby's
that's
been
that's
removed
not what
from
we
her
should
body.
determine. Well, that's if it was removed from her body and it was still viable, right? And that's where the baby guillotine's coming, because I don't think this happens. I don't think women on the 9th month get aborted.
Okay, he's really got to stop using this argument. It's not good. He keeps saying it doesn't happen. It doesn't. Well, it does happen sometimes. So you're gonna have to make a committed position here.
Abortions with viable living children, and then be like, I don't want to kill it. I don't think that happens.
I mean, you don't have to think it happens, but statistically,
Why is there so much
your
crime over
argument is
here?
This only happens for reasons of the health of the mother or the health of the
No,
unborn
I
child.
said,
so you
I
believe it only
said the
happens to
statistics show that at the 9th month, if a woman is going to have an abortion, it's typically because it's a medical complication that can either endanger her or the child.
And what I'm saying is there are doctors who will justify that by saying the medical complication is she is depressed. That is literally one of
Wait. What doctors are doing that? Is it a wide scale problem? Do you have any evidence to suggest that it's a problem? Like, you can't just say like something happens, therefore it's like, yeah. There needs to be more to it. You know what I mean?
the reasons given in surveys of and another reason that is given is that I know the man who I was going to be with.
Okay, but Seamus, I gotta stop you because this is a nebulous argument that doesn't get anywhere, and I can respect the point that if you go to...
Let's go higher density
if
over
you try
here.
and look this up, you're gonna find left-wing sources and right-wing sources that will contradict each other. So my question is strictly on the legality of terminating the life of a child. I can sit here and pull up, oh, hey, here's one. Women abort Down syndrome babies late term rather frequently. I think that's wrong. I don't think that someone's life is forfeit because they have Down syndrome. But your argument is that they do.
No, it's not.
Okay, so the framing here is that women get abortions because, or some women who have Down syndrome babies will get an abortion because they don't want to deal with the Down syndrome baby. That is fucked up in my opinion, for sure. But, this is why it's a nuanced discussion, right? Because, like, you can be there's a difference, like, this is why abortion is such a complicated topic in some ways. Because you have to make the distinction between legal arguments and moral arguments, and it's really difficult to make the, to disassociate the two sometimes. I can personally have an issue with a woman doing this, but I could also be okay with her having the decision to do it, you know what I mean?
That's a strong...
No. Your argument is that women have a right to terminate a baby for any reason.
Yes, they should have the bodily autonomy to make that decision.
So what I'm
Yes.
saying is, in the circumstance of Down syndrome, I think it is wrong to terminate a baby's life at 9 months simply for having Down syndrome, but you agree she is legally allowed to do so.
I think she should be legally allowed to do so. Whether or not I think that's a good idea is
Well,
irrelevant.
then, there's the clarification. I think it should be illegal.
Okay.
I think...
So there are limits to how much bodily autonomy women should have.
So, yes, right.
Okay, so that's just...
The pro-choice argument, because you're pro-abortion, right?
Sure.
Pro-choice traditionally in this country put limits at around like 15 to 16.
Pro-choice, but...
meaning if the baby is dependent upon the body of the mother, then it is the body of the mother and she has final say. If the baby is viable, it can be removed in a process that ends the pregnancy but doesn't end the life of the baby. That's kind of like the compromise, where the baby gets to live and the woman no longer has to be pregnant. There seems to be this amoral argument where, but it just killed the baby anyway, which doesn't make any logical sense. That's the pro-abortion side. So if you go back to the 90s, if you go back to safe, legal, rare, etc., if you even look at Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, that's where I'm at. Conservatives are pro-life outright. Seamus would argue abortion.
Alright, sorry, I have to skip a little
Tell the
bit.
mother we killed it, but we'll sneak it off and give it to someone else. Does that work for you?
Are we still talking about
She should
abortion?
have autonomy. She should have the right to do it if she wants to.
Of course, she should kill the baby after it's already born.
I don't want her...
What if you could do SEO smart?
Okay, I don't know why we're having issues with that building.
to kill a baby. I want her to
Why
have...
do you keep saying it?
Because I want her to have the ability to choose. That's different, and that is a fundamental part of this.
The baby's out of her body, right?
Forcibly. In
No.
your scenario.
Let's say 24 weeks. Woman goes to the doctor. and
Okay,
says,
I'm just
"I
gonna
want the
delete
baby
it.
out."
I don't know what's
What
going
if
on
she
with
says, I don't
it.
want to have this baby.
I don't want to have this baby.
Okay.
And the doctor says, I will remove it.
Okay.
Uh-oh, the baby's alive. What do we do?
So you force her to give birth.
No. She said, doctor, I'd like an abortion. He says, you got it. Step
And so
right up.
he's lying.
No. He does the abortion.
No.
An abortion is terminating a pregnancy. So there's no such thing as a trick abortion. You can't
No,
trick
they're called failed abortions.
failed abortions where
Yes.
doctors trick
right.
women into taking the
No.
baby.
Wait, that's not the same thing as an abortion, though. Like, a failed abortion is by definition not an abortion.
No. So when they perform the abortion, as Seamus explained, they stick metal tools into the brain, scramble it up, and rip its body parts apart,
Okay.
and then pull it out chunk by chunk.
Okay.
When the babies
Nice.
are smaller, sometimes they pull them out, but the babies don't die; they survive, right? So my question is:
So
in
there's a
the
botched
failed
abortion.
What should be done?
A failed abortion being that the child is living, it's
Yes.
outside of the mother.
Yeah.
At that point, you cannot kill that child. That would be murder.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god! Woo! Baby. We are getting into some very esoteric philosophical discussions here. So, like, I don't even know what I would do, honest. I don't even know the answer to this. But, so the thing that's being posited here is like, okay, there's a botched abortion, and the child is on the table or whatever, and it's like fucked up or something, and like, what do you do then, basically? And then killing it is supposedly murder, but it's like just born and it's all fucked up because it was a botched abortion. I mean, that's kind of a tricky one, not gonna lie. I guess like you got to determine if it's even able to live, and there are some hardline people who will say like, yeah, I think that they should still have the right to get the abortion, or I think like they should still have the right to get an abortion, blah blah blah, right? And then there are some other people who may be against it because it's outside the womb physically. So, I don't even know what I would do, honestly.
Agreed on that point.
Right. Yeah. So then, where does the mother's choice come in to kill?
Before that procedure takes place.
So
She has a choice to choose what she wants to have done with her body. If she goes to a doctor and the doctor's like, I'm going to perform an abortion, which the assumption would be that I'm about to terminate the child, but then he just secretly sneaks the child out of there, that's not performing an abortion. You're just being deceptive.
Yeah, and the doctor should go to prison if they did something like that. Right?
I think you go to prison if you go to prison if you perform an abortion.
Snap.
Yeah.
I heard that. Not
Opposite
surprised.
perspective.
So there's also something that none of us know, because I don't think any of us are medical doctors. The difference on the physiology of the female body giving a 9-month abortion, having that happen, or the actual birthing process, whether by C-section or natural birth, it might have vastly different consequences on the female body. So that's something to take into account.
so wait. Remember the Born Alive Act?
Yes.
That was a Republican position, wasn't it? What was that?
Yeah, so there have been a couple of different Born Alive acts in different years, but what they basically say is that if the abortion fails, it is not legal to kill the child.
Wasn't that Republicans were trying to pass
The
a law?
Republicans were trying to pass that. That was one of the only things Obama voted on in the Senate. He voted against it.
Obama voted against it.
Against it,
But you would be in favor of that.
In favor of what?
The Born Alive Act.
I'm not completely familiar with it, so I don't
If an infant is born alive after an attempted abortion, it has the same protection of law and degree as a newborn.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, because at that point it's a human. If you're killing a person that is alive outside of a womb, then that's murder, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask you, this is not a gotcha.
Yeah,
I
that's right.
want to ask you this. So, you believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yeah.
However, when they're inside the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside the mother.
Okay, this is a really, oh my god, this is like such a complicated like topic, because so what we determine to be a person or a human is really difficult to answer, because like how many weeks does it take for you to become like an actual human? Some people think it's at the point of conception. There are some people who think it's at the point of viability. At some people it's whether they can feel pain or not. At some people like what does it mean to be human? I think we need to answer that question before we answer at what point a fetus becomes a human. And that is a really challenging question to answer, because it depends on the parameters you're using to measure what is and isn't a human.
Oh no, I don't think anything's acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside her
Hold on.
Not
What about
purchased.
meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the services in the United States.
Child
I
services?
guess
Child and child
CCFS
services?
would be.
Oh, it's her body though.
Yeah, it's her body.
She wants to do meth.
Okay, come on, dude. Don't be fucking obtuse. He's obviously has some contingencies upon, like, oh, well, bodily autonomy's fine, but there are certain situations where it's not fine. This isn't like a gotcha. Like, that's what I mean, dude. Like, sometimes, like, Tim Pool, like, he'll come off like, oh, I'm just trying to have a civil conversation and the marketplace ideas, and at the same time, he's also, like, trying to do, like, gotchas and shit. It's so fucking annoying.
It's a big deal.
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see her.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her
If
body.
She wants to do meth. What's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is legal, period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it with a child or without a child.
Not in Oregon.
It doesn't matter if it's illegal.
Methylenediamine, MDMA.
Maybe it's alcohol.
Wait, sorry, what?
Not crystal meth.
Crystal meth is legal in Oregon?
No,
it's
not crystal.
Hold on a second.
MDMA is a kind of meth. Methamphetamine is ecstasy. That's a kind of meth. There's also crystal meth, which is not legal. MDMA is legal in some places for therapy sessions. I don't know if it's legal
Yes,
for very
it
pregnant
is.
women.
Okay, it is.
Is it for pregnant
Oregon
women?
decriminalized possession. in
Ow,
2021.
you're right.
But I don't know
But
if
I'm
that's...
just okay, dude. So like,
decriminalizing possession is different than legalizing crystal meth. You know those two things are completely different, right?
What's the question about
wait,
press charges?
hold on.
Yeah.
What?
So when you decriminalize a small amount of drugs, that means if you're caught with that drugs by a cop, that means if you're arrested, you cannot be charged for 1 gram, 2 grams, whatever
That's
that is.
what legalizing is.
No, this is decriminalization, not legalization. You never said
Legalization.
legalization.
Legalization is a semantic term. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it means
There are
that
some
there's...
substances-
Wait, hold on. There is a difference between decriminalization and legalization. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the exact difference. I think decriminalization is like when you just make it like not illegal, but legalization I think includes the collection of tax revenue associated with that thing. I could be wrong though, definitely, but that's my understanding.
It means that there's no longer a prohibition on that product.
Okay, so if a woman does meth, she's legally allowed to have it, right?
Is she legally allowed to do it or possess it?
I mean, what's the difference?
Well, two very different things. You can be legally allowed to possess drugs and not be legally allowed to take drugs, for example.
Alcohol.
So she does alcohol.
Can a woman chug a fifth of vodka while pregnant?
Can? Yes. Should she? No. Pretty simple.
Do you think she has a right to do so?
I think she has a right to do... Yes, she has a right to do it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And heroin?
It's illegal.
I actually don't think heroin's legal. I think heroin actually was legalized. I think it's
Same shit. She can do it, probably depending on where she lives, but should she? No.
controlled, but I think that one specifically was oxycodone and other drugs. So
she has a right to do it. Whether or not I agree with her doing it, that's completely different. I don't agree with a woman who would have an elective abortion at 9 months. I think that is like why the fuck
But
would
so
do that. But I think she has the right to do it. Right?
But do you think it's ethical that she, like...
Oh, I don't think it's
legal-
ethical. No, of course not.
Because some things are made legal that are unethical, in my opinion, and should those be made illegal?
I mean, that's a very broad question.
no,
Very
I'm
broad
sorry.
thing.
Personal use of methamphetamine is allowed. It's a civil citation, like a traffic ticket, not a criminal citation. So allowed maybe is hyperbolic. It is a civil citation to be caught using methamphetamine in Oregon and get a ticket for it, but no crime.
So I just looked up the Born Alive Act, by the way. It says this bill is deliberately misleading and offensive to pregnant people and doctors and nurses who provide their care. It is another attempt by anti-abortion politicians to spread misinformation as a means to get a warped political end, to ban safe and legal abortion. It's an entry point to try and make abortion illegal.
Where did you read this?
Okay, well, no, hold on, no. I don't care. I mean, who cares about the Born Alive Act? The question was, if an abortion happens,
Wait, you guys are the ones who brought it up.
that the baby survives, can you kill it? And Lance already said no. So we're done with
So
that.
he would, yeah, for sure.
So any other political arguments, anyone left, right, or otherwise trying to change that? No, it's irrelevant. Once the baby's born, it's a baby. So
it has the same rights as every other human being, right?
This
It's American.
is an interesting. This falls in line with the idea of anarcho-tyranny that we were talking about.
Why does he keep bringing this up?
Positions are nothing but chaos. There's no logical pathway toward preserving life, improving people's lives. It seems to be only. It's like yin yang, right? There's one side that's talking about long-term planning, logical thinking, and improving the world, and one side that takes the inverse position no matter what. For instance, 25 people push in front of a subway, nobody bats an eye. Three guys try to subdue a man, and
Dude, you don't care. Stop pretending to care about people getting pushed in front of buses or in front of trains. There's no way you care about this. You're only using it because you're using it as a means of trying to get this whole gotcha on fucking politicians who are for how you perceive to be quiet about something.
now they want prison. That's like a weird inversion of what the law is supposed to do. The law should stop the people who are pushing people on the trains and protect the people on the train who are being victimized. But the left's position is the inverse of it, right?
Gotcha.
Are you asking for like an affirmation of that? Because if you ask me,
I'm just saying, like, that's my view.
so
And that was the end of my
when you say the left's idea are all chaos, I mean, if you really wanted to boil down what the left is fighting for, especially myself, it's expanding freedom. I believe in freedom.
Uh-oh.
How do you define freedom exactly?
So for me, I believe in a democratic process where we don't have tyrants, we don't have dictators, we don't have kings or queens. We have the ability as a democracy to be able to vote for who we work for. Or sorry, who our leaders are, right? Like we want to be able to vote for our president or prime minister. I believe in that fundamentally. But my other thing is I want to expand that freedom into the workplace because we spend about 8 hours a day every single day on our works and jobs. I want to expand freedom there so people who work at their jobs for 8 hours a day have the ability to vote for things in their lives, better healthcare, better working conditions, whether or not their boss is corrupt and stealing from all of them. I want to expand that. I want to expand freedom into other parts of life. That's a fundamental belief in
So
me.
what do you mean by stealing?
stealing
Oh no.
like actually shorting someone's check. And
So the largest form of theft in America right now is wage theft. If you
I
look,
had it happen to me. I sued. I went to the National
Good for
Labor
you.
Board and we won.
how does it happen? As you should. So there's a ton of
Not
ways.
paying overtime.
Not paying overtime. Bosses simply just garnishing checks or garnishing wages, stealing tips, or thinking that tips are justification to pay them lower salaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All
Why
that bullshit.
is
And
this
when you look at
clipping
theft,
through
and
so
you-
much?
Like, you look at the stats, right? Cars being stolen, jewelry, all that. Wage theft blows everything out. Like, they're not even comparable.
Okay, isn't like wage theft? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure like the definition of wage theft is actually kind of very specific, and yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's not just like they have to work extra hours unpaid. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like the measurement of wage theft is a little more like, I don't want to say complicated. It's a little more like specific, I guess.
I got
one down here, and then it's like the other one fucking all the way up there.
I got a story for you. So I work at a company. I get a paycheck. I'm good at math and stuff. And so I look at it and I'm like, hey, there's a problem with my paycheck. And they go, no, it's good. I'm like, no, it isn't. There's a problem with my paycheck. Fix it. And I very quickly was like $67 missing. I want it fixed. I want it fixed now. And they went, give us a few minutes. Came back a few minutes later, handed me a check. I looked at it and said, are you joking? And they were like, huh? And I was like, this is wrong. I'm not an idiot. Fix my paycheck. Went to a couple other employees. I said, let me see your paychecks. I looked and I went, come with me. Walked right to the National Labor Board in Chicago and said, this is what they did. They took our statements. We went to the company and we told them we were going to form a union
Hey,
because of what
sweet.
they had done. They fired us on the spot for doing it. We sued them. And then I'll give you air quotes in saying we won. What actually happened was after 6 months of being out of work, they said you can get retro pay, which will be $7,000 each, or we can go to fight and then they'll give you your job back. And I'm like, if they give us our job back, they're going to retaliate against us. No, that's illegal. And I was like, oh, come on. So we won the fight, but it really means they were able to fire us to stop us from forming a union.
So what would be a
Yeah,
good
so-
example of expanding? Sorry, James.
Oh no, I just want to make a point. I haven't seen the stats on wage theft causing more in losses than all other forms of theft combined. I'll just have to take your word for that, and I'm willing to grant that for the sake of
I think that's
this discussion.
true.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm willing to grant it if that is the case, and at the very least for the sake of argument. I certainly don't agree in involuntarily democratizing all workplaces. That's probably a much longer, interesting economic discussion. Happy to engage in it with you. guys.
Involuntarily?
And I suspect we all have different views on it. I don't know if you want to put other issues or if you want to
do.
talk about
I
that.
have
'cause
a
I would
very
like to
big
talk
issue
about
on
that.
Budweiser.
You're gonna move the Bud? I do want to talk about LGBT.
We got to do it.
Why-
So here
why-
we,
why-
and Budweiser opens that door. Ladies and gentlemen, the Anheuser-Busch CEO has finally disavowed the Dylan Mulvaney ad. In private to investors, though it's not in a public statement, sales are down 26%. They're going to be giving out free cases of beer to distributors, and they've vowed to spend millions of dollars in marketing. But the boycott is particularly effective, I would say, and there's videos now.
What does this say? Okay. CEO finally disavows Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light partnership. It says it was not a campaign after firm. Wait, hold on. He's using the Daily Mail? Okay, first off, that's not a really reliable source, but it was not a campaign after firm sent letter to its retailers blaming an outside ad agency for approving it. I would have to look into it a little more, but I don't know if the boycott was necessarily effective. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I don't know if I don't know if we can attribute the boycott being successful to this statement alone.
Coming out of people at sporting events where the Bud Light is just behind the counter totally full. Everyone's buying other brands. So
Wait, hold on. That's not proof that the boycott worked, though. You can't just list one example of like an anecdotal experience and just say, oh yeah, that's proof. Yeah. Oh damn, we're really popping off with the population. Jesus.
James both just leave at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know where they went, but
They
they
ran
just
for it.
both leave.
So yeah, let's jump into this. What are your thoughts on the Budweiser move?
My thoughts are keep going. You're doing awesome. All of you. I mean this. To every single person protesting Bud Light, fuck yes. I am so here for this. It's fucking amazing.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
Budweiser sucks. Anheuser-Busch sucks. It's a massive multinational corporation.
they're
that's absorbing-
super anti-LGBTQ+, so it's beautiful to see. I love it. Oh, they donate so much to right-wing Republicans for anti-LGBTQ laws, so Anheuser-Busch getting taken down. Oh man, I'm so here for it. Keep
Me
going.
too, absolutely. Yeah, they think that they can pay off Republicans, they can hire GOP aides, and that is going to be satisfactory for their customers who are upset with them as a brand. So clearly what we can see, where I think we agree, is that Anheuser-Busch is a faceless corporation with no real values that is willing to spit in the faces of the little guy if it earns them a profit.
Yeah, they're fucking business. No shit. I think that it's good, however, when companies will adopt. I think like people refer to this as rainbow capitalism, where a company will signal favoritism towards LGBTQ plus, or I guess other progressive causes, in an attempt to cynically boost their profits. And to one extent, yeah, they don't actually give a fuck. They'll do whatever they need to do to make money. But at the same time, it is beneficial because it does normalize and destigmatize some elements associated with the trans and LGBTQ plus community. That could be beneficial, I think. Even though they donate to, like, right-wing shit, it's still good, I think.
They're a trash company, and nobody should buy their products. The left and the right both agree. Here, here.
Dude, I love it, by the way. Like, these fuckers didn't have any issues whatsoever with Budweiser prior to the Dylan Mulvaney thing. They just pounced on it because it was an opportunity for them to, like... It just so happens that they start taking issue with Budweiser after the Dylan Mulvaney thing. Like, okay, sure.
Unity for once. I hope they fail.
Same thing with Disney. Keep going after Disney.
Absolutely.
For it. Take Disney down. I'm all for the right wing taking on Disney. All for the right wing taking on.
That's a cringe take from Lance here, but okay.
Bush, yes, of course. These are terrible fucking corporations. I'm all here for it. By the way, the Daily Mail is like the #1 source on the show, right? Like every single time you pulled it up, because that same site that you showed me, All Sides Media Bias, it has the Daily Mail on right wing. And I know that you yourself, when you
Yeah,
when
they're
you pulled
actually
it up,
fantastic.
but if you use them as a primary source, you understand why I'd say that. Like
We don't use them as a primary source.
Okay.
What happens is, when we pull up stories, I'll go to like CNN, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, ABC, and they'll each have like 300 words. And then you go to the Daily Mail after doing a search on key elements of the story, and the Daily Mail will have like 7 different versions of all breaking down different components. Like if you scroll down the Daily Mail, they often do these special sections where they have entirely different stories within the story.
Wait, dude, that's like other news platforms do the same thing, right?
Providing more context. Like for instance, this story from the Daily Mail not only talks about the current story with the CEO, but it even goes all the way into all of the context going back to the commercial that was...
Dude! Are you kidding me? You're highlighting this as something that's unique or special about the Daily Mail? Many different news sites do the same fucking thing. Okay.
Was released. The sale dropped at 6% in the first week. To the video, it like covers literally every, even has a photo of the VP and her husband.
Yeah, so does
in-depth
most.
This story is. So it's like if I'm gonna pull up a single article, I can pull up 5 ABC, CBS, New York Times. Or I can just pull up this one that has seemingly everything, including Kid Rock, including John Rich, including Bud Light being poured into a dumpster. So it's a massive aggregate.
But honestly, I have no problem with y'all going after fucking Bud Light. Have a time, go nuts. I have a really big problem with what I feel on this show is a lot of anti-trans hysteria and fear-mongering that takes place.
Do you want to open that book?
I have that book at home. We can talk about that in a second. Yeah. And I'm totally comfortable talking about that book. I've read it.
Should it be in schools?
I want to talk to you about the trans issue, though. Because
Wait, what book?
That's why I asked about the book.
Okay,
So
we can get to the books and the schools, the curriculums, and everything that Florida's taken away. But you profess to be kind of like fact-based, science-based, right?
Yeah.
Like you pull up, I've noticed you want to pull up stats and figures and stuff like that.
Of course.
Why is it that you push propaganda when it comes to trans people?
Like what?
That is so far beyond the pale. Like what? Okay, let's start with gender-affirming care.
Mm-hmm.
Gender-affirming care, you're very, very against. I've heard you call it
What-
the mutilation.
I don't call it mutilation. I've never said that.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, even if that's true, you have called it castration, which is, like, similar, pretty much, in terms of the fear-mongering element associated with that, yeah.
That's what you say on your show.
I do.
No, I
I
don't.
don't know if he does. I call it
I don't.
children.
I call it child sex change.
When you were talking about Dwayne Wade moving his family,
Someone in the crowd said, "Why are you mutilating your son?" That was a quote from someone else. I didn't say that. I call it.
but then you made-
and I've explicitly said I don't take the right educator approach of calling it mutilation
let's-
because that's not effective in having a conversation. I will plainly call it a child sex change as what it is. I'm not going to call it gender affirming or mutilation because I don't think those things accurately explain what it is.
okay, so when it comes to gender-affirming care, 0 to about
Are you
10.
talking about child sex change?
No, I'm talking about gender-affirming care.
But
0 to about 10 years
You
old.
got to define
The
it.
answer is yes.
You got to
Yeah.
define it, okay? Because if you're talking
Men's Warehouse. Fit to your build, your day, your style. Love the way you love.
about something different, tell
Okay.
us what you're talking about.
All right, so if someone is trans and they're young, and until they're about 10 years old before they go through puberty, gender-affirming care would be in the form of you using different pronouns, preferred pronouns, and allowing them to dress differently.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Do you?
That's okay. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yes I do.
I don't.
Okay, so both of you don't.
Right.
Okay, so do you accept that there is no surgery being performed on children at that age?
Okay, so here we go. Let me be very, here's my understanding, okay? Gender affirming care. Well, when it comes to sexual reassignment surgery, this is largely not taking place for minors. Minors are typically undergoing, if anything, like puberty blockers, because obviously that's when puberty takes place. and depending on circumstances, will sometimes be put on, or rather be prescribed hormones, right? And now it depends on the person, depends on the child, it depends on like a bunch of shit, right? But like sex reassignment surgery usually has to have, like, you're not even allowed, if I remember correctly, to have gender reassignment surgery or sex reassignment surgery until after being on hormones for X amount of years. There are medical things associated with that, and that's one of the reasons why like you can't actually get SRS before or shortly after being on HRT. So like it's like there's like a whole like process to it, I guess is my point, and that's one of the main reasons why most people do not get sex reassignment surgery before. Now it depends, I guess, on what your definition of sex reassignment surgery would entail, but what I mean when I say that is like getting bottom surgery or getting a mastectomy, stuff like that, I guess. Although like top surgery for girls or assigned female birth people, they sometimes, I think more often get top surgery than like the proportion of children who do get top surgery is greater than those who get bottom surgery, I think. But again, this is over the course of a period of time where they are prescribed hormones and so on and so forth. So yeah, but yeah, again, for the most part, children are not getting sex reassignment surgery. That's not really happening.
0 to about 10. There's no hormone blockers. There's no puberty blockers.
There is hormone blockers. I don't think surgery is happening on kids under 12.
So hormone blockers aren't given to children until they go through puberty.
That's not true. We actually pulled this up with Destiny. He actually called me out. I was wrong about a stat.
Okay.
What we found was 47,000 cross-sex hormones. I think it was something like 17,000 puberty blockers and like 2,000 double mastectomies for girls after the age of 13 or whatever. But
so it doesn't apply to anything I just said.
Puberty blockers were preteen. Puberty blockers.
Yes, puberty blockers.
They have to because they have to give them the puberty blocker before puberty starts.
Yes,
Yeah.
So you. Okay, so you're just reaffirming what I just said. From 0 to 10 till you're about to go through puberty, gender-affirming care only comes in the form of using different pronouns, using different names, allowing them to dress differently, and that's it. And you don't have a problem with that.
Wait, Lupron too?
Okay, so we'll get to Lupron, but up to that point, you don't have a problem with any of this yet, right?
I'm saying,
and you agree that there is no surgery being performed on children at that age. 0 to 10.
Let me just start from the beginning so I can make sure I'm getting this right.
Yeah.
I don't care if parents call their kids names or whatever. I care about medical or surgical intervention.
Okay, so that doesn't happen until about the age of about 16. That's the average age for.
But you're wrong. Okay, like and look, we had Destiny on the show. We went into great detail about it. There are girls who are 13 who are getting this done, and there was a study. Actually, it was Canadian, I believe. 12 to 17. They had several hundred surgeries performed.
Okay, so again, I said the average age, but if you want to say that there are people who get this at 12, that could be the case. Let's start with puberty blockers then. Lupron. You both have a big problem with Lupron?
I don't know a lot about it, but I consider it a medical treatment.
Okay. Yeah, we shouldn't be giving Lupron to kids.
So
I don't know what that is, unfortunately.
Why don't you want Lupron being given to trans kids?
Because it's a puberty blocker that inhibits the natural function and development of their body. And more importantly, I think my view is built upon what we've seen out of Europe already, right? So earlier on, maybe a few years ago, I was more agnostic on the issue until Sweden, Denmark, Finland abandoned this and the Tavistock Center got shut down. And the data they released said this actually caused more harm than good. And then I was like, well, okay, hey, how about that? And for some reason, the United States, they're still hell-bent on moving forward with it. We can already see from, better countries with better healthcare systems saying no to this, right?
Okay, so I can address those individually because I have the explanation as to why that happened. When it comes to Lupron, 0 to 10 is about the age where gender-affirming care only comes in the form of different names, pronouns, stuff like that. We can all agree that's completely fine.
We can't. I mean, I just
okay,
again,
okay,
I
sorry.
just you three. I don't.
Fine, okay, fine. But it's their show, so I just want to concentrate on
My position is more just like, man, like social therapy stuff. They say that after puberty, desistance rates are between 65 and like 92%.
So that's completely false. I'll get to that. We have to do this.
Come on, bro.
We have to do this piece by piece first, okay? Oh, let's get through Lupron.
Hey, I just proved you wrong. Studies show 10 follow-up studies found resistance of 61 to 98%.
Yeah. Can you click on the Wikipedia?
Oh, you're missing the mic. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Missing the mic.
What are the studies? What are we talking about? I would like to know if you are taking these studies specific. Well, because I have each one of them written down here. I'm quite curious. Is the Drummond study one of them? Is the Wallen study? Is Stensma, the Swedish study, a part of this?
Dude, don't unload the clip just yet, buddy. Keep that close to the vest.
2011 study?
Probably, I don't know.
Well, we should know. This is incredibly important for what we're talking about.
It's not. This is 2018. This is Gender Dysphoria in Adolescence, Current Perspectives in the National Library of Medicine.
Okay, scroll down to the conclusion.
If I get the mic again.
Oh, sorry.
You can carry it around.
Yeah.
I gotta get used to this. I know, scroll down to the conclusion of the study.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to at least skim some of what the numbers and reference are to, like the reference.
While you're skimming, when I think of a little kid
Like
being like a
outcomes,
little boy being
psychiatric
like,
disorders.
I'm a girl. The parent, I would hope that the parent would be like, you can pretend to be whatever you want. You can be an actor. You can play a girl. But I get afraid when a mom's like, he said he's a girl. That means he's trans.
Right. So
Okay, that doesn't happen. So, okay, this is what I mean. Like, I think that, like, if you say, if a child comes up to you, right, and they say, I think I might be a boy or a girl, then, like, the proper response should be like, oh, okay, well, why do you feel that way? How long have you been feeling that way? Like, not immediately saying, like, oh, okay, you might be trans, let me take you to the doctor. Like, that doesn't happen. Or rather, I don't think it happens that often. This isn't really, like, a familiar subject for many people, so I don't know.
for this, it's not a process. It doesn't exist in which someone can say.
We're having a lot of
"Oh,
crime
no,"
issues,
and
I've
then they
noticed.
Go into a doctor's office and like, well, take some Lupron. It's you do years and years of consultation
Uh,
between
can I-
doctor
I'm just-
and between like a therapist and between the patient itself.
I'm just going to read this.
Sure, of course.
Adolescence is a crucial time for identity and psychosexual development in young people with gender identity concerns. The outcomes of GDC
We need
have been discussed in
another
terms
priest-
with its
or high-
persistence and desistance.
kindergarten, my
For
bad.
most children with GDC, whether GD will persist or desist will probably be determined between the ages of 10 and 13 years, although some may need more time. Evidence from the 10 available prospective follow-up studies from childhood to adolescence, reviewed in the study by Ristori and Steensma, indicate that for
Oh,
around
it is Steensma. I was right. I asked if this was Steensma. Okay, I can answer this.
80% of children who meet the criteria for GDC,
Right.
but you said 2011.
Oh, so there's multiple Steensma studies. They've actually built upon each other. And the problem with the Steensma study, unfortunately, is that they actually categorized people who were not trans in that study. They didn't compare people who were trans to people who were trans and then detransitioned. They compared
Yeah.
people in the general population.
What's your source? What's your source for that?
The actual
Source.
author of the study has come out since and said that
What can
study.
I pull up to confirm? Because look, I pulled
Why are you
up
so
the study that said
suspicious?
thing, you can counterclaim. I will pull it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so go to.
Because I don't know who Steensma is.
Okay, so well, Steensma, and the problem, I'll say one more thing because I have this written down. 45.3% of the people did not reapply for treatment. They counted that as people who were detransitioning, but they weren't in fact.
What policies do we need?
Wait, can I ask you something?
Yes, go. Okay, so he asked me the source. Let's do things in order.
I'm going to respond to what you said.
Trans
I need
advocate.
to respond to what
That
you
last
said
point
right
is
now.
kind of important.
Okay.
We're literally talking about desistance.
Right.
If they're including people who desisted, you have to get the number of those who desisted.
They included people who did not reapply for treatment. They counted that as someone who was desisting. That's just someone who didn't show up again. That's
yeah.
you do
That's
not
literal desistance.
No, it's
I don't
not.
see
It's
it.
not.
That's
No,
literal
not
desistance.
whatsoever, Tim. That is someone who has decided they just don't want to go talk to that doctor or experience things with that doctor. They could have gone off to a different doctor. They could have done something else. But that is not someone who has verifiably said, I was trans, I'm no longer trans. That's just people who did
let me
not
pull
show
up
up.
your thing.
Okay, so go to transadvocate.com/.
I'm not going to, I need a study or something, not an advocacy website.
Okay,
I pulled up a scientific study for you.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you should probably have, like, this shit, like, better, like, prepared, I would say.
I'm not
Found Lance.
Good job. So this is an interview with the person who did the study in this article.
I have pulled up a scientific study for you.
And
You
the
gotta
person
challenge
who
it.
did, and I'm challenging you with the person who did the fucking study. And
But you're
they're-
telling me to pull up an advocacy website, which is not on par with a scientific study.
But it's featuring the person who did the scientific
Is there a
study.
counter study saying this is not correct?
Okay, yes, an overwhelming amount.
Like-
oh, okay, sure.
Let me pull that up.
Okay.
Like, look, if I pull up the NIH, and then you say go to transadvocate.com, you understand why I'm not.
Let's do this. Cool. Cornell University.
I'm not going to Breitbart for my source on desistance, okay?
Sounds good. Cornell University.
Oh, God.
Cornell University did a meta study on 55 different
pull it up?
studies. Just start looking up Cornell University meta study.
Okay, I'm sorry, but, like, Tim's gotta let him finish. Like, you can have your... You can address the claims after they're made, you know? So, no.
Detransition. Cornell University did a meta study on 55 different studies on detransitioning. Of those 55, they found 52 of the studies showed that people detransitioned at a rate of less than 4%. And of those people who did it, the reason they detransitioned was social stigma. That's 52 of the 55. The other 3 of those 55, they didn't show a net negative effect. There was not a single study of the
Oh, it should
55 Cornell
probably-
University looked at that showed detransitioning or gender affirming care being a bad thing for trans people. If anything, it was a net positive.
Yeah, no
This is a
shit.
meta study of a whole bunch of studies. I have another meta
So
study.
wait, but
I've-
hold on.
But I'm trying to pull up a
No,
scientific.
you can't, like... Okay, again, like, he's gotta, like, chill. Like, just say what, make one claim at a time, go point by point, and don't be like, I got all these studies, oh my god! Like, just chill out. Make your claim, and then, go from there.
To confirm what you're saying.
Yeah, I also
Give
just
me
want to ask a
title.
question about this too. So you're mentioning that this is a meta-analysis of studies
Yes.
on people who have detransitioned, but by definition, right, this is taking into account people who went through, what, puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, physical surgeries?
Sure, for each study it was different things. In some of the studies, it was people who were going through puberty blockers. Some had hormone therapy, but a lot of them, in one form or another, had received gender-affirming care. They were trans when the study first tried to identify these people, and then it looked at them years later.
And how is this sample collected? Because almost every single issue or almost every single study I've seen from trans advocates on this issue use a convenience sample rather than doing some kind of controlled
I'm
randomized test for
right, so
treatment.
this is a study of a whole bunch of other studies. So we would have to go between each study because at the end of the day, I don't want to fall in this trap that me and Tim were about to do where each of us are saying like, well, I have a study, well, you have a study, well, I have a study. We could do this all day. So we should look at metadata, right? We should look at compromising data that looks over a whole bunch of studies. A second metadata study that I want to look at.
No.
Surgery, a systematic review and meta-analysis.
You're going too
This
fast,
includes Canada,
Lance.
the Netherlands, Belgium, UK, Italy, USA, Brazil, Sweden, Singapore, Germany, Norway, Ireland, Serbia, and an interview between 27 studies.
You're going too fast.
928 trans patients. It showed a less than 1% regret rate.
So you're
Also,
saying-
can I also
let-
mention something
real
desistant
quick,
in
I
detransition?
I have another message.
Okay, I got to address this right now.
He's, oh my god, Lance, come on, man. He's like unironically throwing a little bit. Like, chill out, dude.
There's a problem we are facing in that you are saying a lot of things and I can't pull up any sources. At the very least, all I did was Google searched it. I pulled up the 2 studies that were associated with it and said, here's what it says. I have not given you my personal perspective on it. You have now given me your personal view on it.
No, I've given you the studies. These are 2 meta-studies.
What
I have a third
are the
meta-study.
studies? Let me please pull them up. I can't find what you're talking
The
about.
first one is Cornell University.
Dude.
Meta-study
What's the name of it?
It's Cornell University's meta-study of 72 studies on gender-affirming care. Of that, 55 of the studies were directly related to detransition.
Oh, shit.
Meta study on.
I just want to flag that
What's the title-
desistance and
what's the title of the
detransitioning are
technical?
2 different things.
Right,
as well.
what?
Look up
Cornell University,
Cornell University. What does scholarly research say about the effect of gender transition on gender trans well-being?
Wait, why didn't you just like link it to him?
Nice. And the third meta-study that I want to bring up is a U.S. study. It's a 2015 U.S. transgender study.
But this isn't a scientific research paper that's peer reviewed.
No, this is a meta-analysis of scientifically researched papers.
That's from what we know about
But
inequality.
hold on, like, do we have a standard on why we should accept
There's,
it?
if you want to know the methodology, there's a click here to view the methodology. You can find that out for yourself.
But this is not a peer-reviewed scientific paper.
This is a meta-analysis, Tim.
Okay, so I
peer-reviewed
reject
scientific
it.
papers.
I rejected that. Right.
Okay, so if you want to check that out,
Bro, next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna tell me ivermectin is some cure because of a
This has
meta-analysis.
nothing to do with it.
No,
No,
bro.
this has nothing
You
to do with
can't come.
ivermectin.
You can't come to me when everyone tries screaming about ivermectin because of a meta-analysis that I reject and say I don't think it works,
You go,
and then
sorry,
have someone
we're
from
not
the
talking
left
about
come to me
ivermectin. We're not
and now
talking
claim
about ivermectin.
meta-analysis is effective. No, the point is this: I said give me a study, and you cannot do it.
I am on my way to give you a third meta-study. If you go study back and forth, Tim, this is going to take fucking forever. So let's do one study. One study. I give you 2. Give me
He's
one.
so
You
bad.
just can't give me one study. I give you 2. And I didn't even make an assertment. I Googled it and pulled up what
You
I
want
found.
individual studies
I
instead of
have Googled-
meta-analysis, which is ridiculous, but sure, here's individual studies. The mental health outcomes in transgender non-binary youth receiving gender-affirming care from February 25th, 2022. This shows
Let
that...
me type it and pull it up.
Yeah, but I can explain to them while you're doing your own research.
Can you-
Kids
I
who
need- I
receive
need you to tell me what the name
blockers
is so I
and
can pull it up.
mental health outcomes in
Mental health
transgender,
outcomes in
transgender and non-binary
What a fucking mess.
February 25th, 2022.
Oh
peer-reviewed study.
god.
The findings, kids who receive puberty blockers and hormone therapy had 60% lower odds of moderate or severe depression and 73% lower odds of suicidality. Here's another individual study for you.
Hold on. That nothing to do with resistance.
Dude, come on, Lance. Lance. What are you doing? Chill. Chill out, dude. Jesus. Let them finish their shit and then you can... Yeah, keep going.
Do you want to go back to resistance studies?
That's what I was asking you about. I Google searched resistance. Wikipedia
Look
has
up.
2 studies that say it's 61 to 98%. You said that's wrong. I said,
It is-
your
it-
source. You
yes.
didn't give me one.
I did on the spot.
You gave me
It's
a
okay, we're on camera, so you
that is
you
not
go-
peer
you go
reviewed.
back.
It's not a peer reviewed source.
Meta-analysis.
It's
If you want to go back and forth, Tim, on single studies, like I said, this can take forever. So
Do you not have a single study?
I've named you tons of studies.
No. You've given me a meta-analysis, not a single
A
study.
meta-analysis combines other studies. Do you understand
So
how that
what-
works?
yes.
So of that
So what
55
your
studies that
argument
it
is,
looked, of the
is that
55
you've got
studies that it looked
72
at,
studies that found a
52 of them
conclusion, and then
said
someone
that it
looked
is
at
less
them and
than
made a
4%,
different.
Tim.
You're saying that out of 72 studies that found a
No,
conclusion.
55.
50
It looked at 72, 55 talked about detransitioning.
It was a hypothetical number. I'm saying
51.
You're looking at
Is
a bunch of studies that have come to conclusions
Of course.
that are peer reviewed, and you're saying, but someone analyzed those.
Cornell University.
Who from Cornell?
Click on
Dude.
methodology and learn about
Tim, fuck you, man. Just fucking look at the study. Jesus Christ. At this point, it'd be way easier if you just, like, looked at it and saw the authors of the fucking study. Jesus Christ. Like, yeah.
the methodology. You just rejected it outright when you saw it. You were like, oh, I
Because it's not a
reject this
study.
outright.
It's not a
It's a
study.
meta-analysis of studies. These are different things. I'm explaining that
But
to
the
you.
problem is these studies have their own conclusions you're ignoring.
they combine their conclusions to reach their findings.
Let me
That's how they do
explain
this.
for those that want to understand what I'm trying to say. During COVID, there were a whole bunch of studies done, individual studies, peer-reviewed, that found ivermectin did not work. The right kept bringing up meta-analyses that said, actually, it does. I said, and I said this to Joe Rogan, I reject that. Show me the actual study. I do not believe this is correct. I will not afford you some benefit to come in and make the same argument to me. If you do not have a study that is peer-reviewed cited, then I'm not going to entertain your opinion.
So when I bring up the Cornell University study, that's
not a study, it's a meta-analysis.
Yeah, of 55 peer-reviewed studies, whose conclusion of 52 came to the fact that there's a less than 4% detransition rate. If you go to r/science, Tim, you can find out. No. This
Come on. I'm asking for, you're pulling up Reddit when I'm...
I'm pulling up Reddit because Cecilia, I believe her last name is pronounced Dejen, explains and downplays why you're wrong about that 80-85% because she's the one who actually did that study. She's the one who did the study you cited. So she explains why it's being misused. It is not true.
I can say this. There are arguments about what is true all day, every day. There's arguments that M theory is
So we
wrong and that science
Wait, hold on.
to give up because too many scientists have dedicated their lives to it. So they argue that M theory is the theory, while other...
So people say things all the time. We can't know what's true and what's not true. So, yeah.
are coming up with like E8 Lie group theory or whatever. I totally understand that people will decide what they think is true or not. Hence, I have a bottom line standard. If the right comes at me and says, ivermectin meta-analyses prove it works, I say, don't know, don't care. We have rejected the concept of someone analyzing a collection of studies and making determination. What our standard
we haven't. What is he talking about?
If we're going to have any basic agreement on what is or isn't, there has to be a unified standard there, which is a peer-reviewed study, which is not absolute. If I have 2 peer-reviewed studies and the establishment narrative, when I search for it, says 61 to 98%, I will not accept your meta-analysis opinion the same as I wouldn't for someone who believes ivermectin works, because your argument is founded upon the same basis as theirs.
Okay, so first off, the meta-analysis of ivermectin actually showed that it wasn't effective at preventing or treating COVID-19. That was the actual meta-analysis of ivermectin, so it actually would back up your own claims. Secondly, you and me can look at individual studies, and it can take a very long time, but we should look at regret after gender-affirming surgery, a systematic review and meta-analysis of prevalence, which looks at, again, 27 studies and interviews 7,928 trans people across the world. And again, in places like Italy, USA, Brazil, you name it, that meta-analysis also found a less than 1% regret rate. You have to be able to combine multiple studies because this is something that has been so thoroughly investigated globally for so long that to ignore the science and data on this is to flagrantly...
Well, there's not been a single large-scale randomized clinical trial for puberty blockers to treat gender dysphoria. There's not been one.
You all are very against Lupron, right?
Well, I don't know much about it.
I know,
I just very against is pretty strong. Okay. I'm typically like, we shouldn't give...
I'm saying there hasn't been one large-scale randomized clinical trial for these
like
treatments.
Lupron for when children go through like the early onset puberty, and it's like an actual medical issue. Like, that's why saying very against something is like, well, what we're talking about is, are we going to a kid who, are we dealing with an actual case of, say, endocrine disruption caused by phthalates and PCBs, or are we dealing with a kid who's just playing with dolls and the parents are incorrect, right?
And in that case, we have a long process where they would have to do these reviews with again, professionals who determine whether or not it's appropriate. And people who go on puberty blockers, I want to add this, if it's for a limited amount of time, they want to do it only to be able to pull that off. No, it isn't. If you see the actual doctors on this, you only take it... No, Tim, let me finish this sentence. Come on, you got me on your show. Let me finish this. You only go on puberty blockers for a short amount of time before you can be put onto HRT. They do not want to keep them on puberty blockers, and that way you avoid a lot of the potential negative side effects.
We had Helena Kirchner on the show, who walked into a Planned Parenthood and within minutes was given the maximum dose of testosterone.
Anecdote.
Absolutely. So when I say lived experience happens, you say it doesn't happen, like it did happen.
No, I'm saying it can't happen.
Wait, hold on. So when it comes to lived experiences, it's only relevant insofar as determining if something happens, not whether or not it's a prevalent issue like that or a prevalent thing. So that's the distinction to be made there.
I'm saying you have to look at broader data. You have to look at broader trends.
That's the issue I take, right?
Yeah, and it would make sense if I brought up a single horror story to you and said, this is fact. It can happen.
I said, we don't want that to happen.
Of course, no one wants that to happen. But then if we want to understand how this is actually taking place around the world from an actual perspective of science, we have to look at the data. We have to look at meta-studies. We have to look at and analyze global understanding.
I love data.
Lupron, by example. Yes, it's true that Lupron is not FDA approved for the use of on cisgender children. There is a product that is FDA approved for use with children that is a puberty blocker, and it has been used for a long time, for generations and decades.
Oh, no.
It's Lupron. It was just being done.
No, but that's for an entirely different reason. That's for an entirely different reason. So to say we want to prevent a child from undergoing early onset puberty so that they can develop at a normal, healthy rate is entirely different. It is entirely different from saying we're going to administer puberty blockers because this child feels they're a member of the opposite sex. That's an entirely different reason.
Whether or not it's
because you're looking for a
dangerous
different
is going to be the problem, right? You want to know whether or not its use is going to be dangerous on children.
And the reason for administering a certain treatment can render it dangerous. So, for example, if we have been amputating people's limbs for hundreds of years, if I go into a doctor and say, please cut my arm off because I don't want it anymore, and he cuts my arm off, that's medical malpractice. For you to jump in and go, we have been cutting people's arms off for hundreds of years. This is medically approved. People are allowed to do this. It's not. Yes, absolutely.
So what you're describing is called BIID, Body Identity Disorder. I forget how it's spelled. It is a real phenomenon. Yes, it's extremely rare, but we know enough about it at this point to know that people will seek out to get operations on the black market if they have BIID. And what we found when people do that and go to the black market to have them removed is that it only provides a temporary amount of relief for their condition, and then it returns, and they have further complications from the fact that they now have a disability and/or medical complications that come from all
My
that.
point is not about any kind of body dysmorphia about losing a limb. My point is about drawing a false. My point is about drawing a false conclusion by a medical treatment being allowed under circumstance A, but not being allowed under circumstance B. You're saying we allow it for kids who have hit precocious puberty, but then we don't allow it for kids who don't want to go through puberty because they want to be a member of the opposite
It's
sex.
still not FDA approved. That's
Yeah,
different.
but you understand my point. You
just
can't claim those things are the same.
I just Google searched it real quick. Stat in 2017, 100 out of 100 with NewsGuard. Drug use to halt puberty may cause lasting health problems. More than 10,000 adverse event reports were filed with the FDA, reflecting the experience of women who've taken Lupron, describing everything from brittle bones to faulty joints.
You know, regarding meta-analyses,
I'm worried about, giving kids things on an experimental basis.
yeah, this is a huge, long conversation, and it would be so awesome to go through each study. I would love to. It would probably take like 7 hours, 6 hours, but we could do it, but like not tonight, unfortunately.
Well, so let me ask you though,
But I want to keep down this path because I think
yeah,
we're making good progress.
Let me
here.
ask you a question, right? Like Jazz Jennings is sterile, right?
I don't know much about that.
Jazz Jennings,
She's a reality TV star, right?
Jazz Jennings. I'm concerned that Jazz isn't trans.
That's not for us to say.
I didn't say. I said I'm concerned that Jazz is not trans, right? And the reason is Jazz is dating women now, right? So then Jazz would.
What does it have to do with being trans?
Well, Jazz would then be a biological male dating women at the age of 23.
What does
right?
it have to do with being trans?
So it has to do with whether or not Jazz made the decision for themselves or the parent made it when they were 3 years old. So the question is.
Wait, what do you mean the parent made it for them? Okay. So, being trans isn't a decision made by your parents. There are certainly aspects of the relationship between being a parent and a child where the child may feel enticed to think one way or another because they're their parent. But when it comes to your gender identity, I'm hard-pressed to believe that the parent is making that decision for them. I refuse to believe that. Part of the ability for somebody to undergo HRT or whatever is dependent upon the child's willingness to be prescribed, or rather seek out such prescription for hormones, supplemental hormones. It's just very bizarre to put the onus or the burden here on the parent as if they're the one maliciously trying to get their child an HRT when that's not how that works.
We want to avoid a John Money type situation, right? Where you had these two kids, and the doctor told one of the young boys he was actually a girl, and then forced him to live as a girl, ultimately resulting in suicide, and then the death of the brother as well. We don't want that to happen. And so that did happen already. We know that happened. So we have to be careful about taking a 3-year-old and then raising them and telling them they're female, because then if they start exhibiting...
Okay, that really doesn't happen, but okay.
...traditional, gender behaviors, there may be some concern. For instance, Jazz stopped dilating. And that was the big controversy of the past few weeks, the mother going on TV saying she would force Jazz to do it. If Jazz...
One moment, please. Sorry about that. Alright, hopefully this wraps up shortly. I'm gonna have to put it on 1.5 speed. Let's go.
Jazz saying, I'm not done. And the mother saying, do it or I'll wring your neck.
Oh, whoops.
And then Jazz not dating women. We're starting to see a pattern that may be concerning because it follows the John Money sort of situation. Whether or not Jez is trans or not, my concern is, uh-oh, what if? And that means there may be children who are being pushed down a path that ultimately leads to their suicide because their parents can't make the decision for them what they did.
So the data overwhelmingly shows that if you give children gender affirming care, especially if you have loving accepting parents who accept children's actual gender identity, it reduces the rates of suicide dramatically. In the case of a parent who affirms the child's gender, it reduces suicide rates of up to 92% in some settings. It's not a case of, more often than not, these are children who are approaching their parents saying they think this is something happening to them, and parents pushing back and being like, no, this is wrong, you're just a tomboy, oh, this is not you, this is blah, blah, blah. And you don't go into a doctor and all of a sudden they're like, here's Lupron.
They do.
No, but they don't. The average amount of time,
You can't say they don't when we've had the anecdotes, they do. Call it an anecdote.
It's an
I'm telling you it does happen.
Of course, but that's an anecdote. You have to look at
So
data,
don't say
science,
does it
statistics.
happen.
Well, it happens, but that doesn't mean it's
Then
a
it
broad
should
trend.
not happen.
Right, but that's okay. This is asking
let-
we have to talk about what actually occurs via the numbers, right? That's what matters. Like I have here the largest U.S. transgender survey ever done. It's 2015 to 21,598 participants, and this covers people in childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, and it has all the results you're looking for.
So let me ask you a question. Why do you think we're seeing the a rapid increase in the past few years
I can explain that as well.
of young people identifying as trans?
Okay, can I answer that?
Can you
afterwards?
read the
Yeah,
statement,
of course. So it shows the 2015 U.S. transgender survey of 21,598 participants that with hormone therapy, psychological distress for children reduces by 222%. Late adolescence, 153%. Adulthood, 81%. Suicidal ideation for children goes down 135%. For adolescents, 62%, and for adults, 21%. That is dramatic.
Is this the Stanford Medical School survey analysis done by Jack Turbin?
I do. Okay. But in terms of the increase, Tim, of people,
Because there was a study done by Stanford Medical School that very closely fits the description of what you just read out there, which is very ascientific and yeah. So just to please find the source of that, because I want to pull that apart, but I want to be sure that I know you're talking about that study.
I'm curious as to why you think it's increasing so much.
what's that signify?
The history of left-handedness.
This is the history of left-handedness in the United States. You see what happens.
Oh no. Okay. There's no way Tim wasn't prepared for this.
It levels out. Those also levels out levels.
We used to see people who were left-handed as satanic, as the devil, all that kind of shit. Remember that, right? And that's why there was a lot of people who didn't report themselves as being left-handed, and then boom, when we stopped doing that after the 1880s and the 1900s, it spiked. Now this spike is because there was a whole bunch of indoctrination, or Alex Jones like, oh, left-handed ideology, everyone's become left-handed. This has nothing to do with that. This is naturally how many left-handed people there were, and then it plateaued. We are in a situation right now where it is safer than ever for people to come out, and if they're queer, bisexual, whatever it is, and because of that, they feel safer expressing that. That's why Gen Z, of all
I was concerned
generations,
there was a trans genocide.
Yeah. So here's
this is the actual statistics on people increasing. You can see the red one. That is Gen Z. That is the amount of people who are in Gen Z. It's skyrocketing. It looks like they're identifying more than ever. So their generation feels more comfortable talking about this kind of stuff.
So you don't think that there's like a trans genocide or anything like that?
I don't think that there's a trans indoctrination that is coming through media.
Genocide.
Yes, I'm saying that I don't think there's a trans indoctrination coming through media that is programming kids to become trans. I think that's ridiculous. So if you want to change topics to talk about trans genocide, we can move on to that. But you asked me specifically why is there a spike?
Yeah.
That is why.
Okay, so my follow-up is, you think trans people feel safer than ever?
No.
That's
now,
kind of a
there's 400
steep
people
inclination.
in the United States that is directly targeting trans people.
So they don't feel safe.
No,
Of course they don't.
whatever.
So then why are they coming out if they don't feel safe?
They have more access because that Generation Z, has a lot more acceptance towards trans people than all the people who pass laws, draconian people who pass laws. The boomers are the ones running the show right now. They're still the ones in government. They're still the ones passing laws. There's very few Generation Z in government or parliament.
You want to know what I think? I think there is a trans genocide. And I think it's you. Okay. Because you're sterilizing a lot of these people. And they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads in the uterus is an absolute sterilization. And then puberty blockers have a very high rate, and cross-sex hormones are
Wait, so is he referring to like children, or what's he exactly referring to? Because, like I said already, GRS is largely not taking place against people who are like minors, right? Yeah.
extremely high rate of sterilizing them. So these people can no longer reproduce. That's genocide.
Is this the joke you're going to go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce. And if they're a young age and they haven't had the ability, like for instance, Jazz Jennings can never have kids. Jazz Jennings also, and this probably part of your studies, can't actually feel any sexual feeling of any kind.
Do you have any idea how weird this sounds right now? Like, why are you obsessed with a stranger's genital pleasure? That's so weird. That's so bizarre.
That was very weird yourself.
You guys are all
like,
weird.
So I'm talking about...
I'm not weird, you're weird.
Activities, which is a large portion of the global economy, whether you like it or not, sex sells, they say. And when I say this person will never have this ability, you go, how weird is that?
It's weird for you to fixate on a stranger's genital pleasure. That's strange. It's so bizarre.
Well, she's public about it.
But see, you're not making an argument right now. Is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument.
Yeah,
That's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
I'm just giving you my genuine thought when you say something like that.
Well,
Like,
that was a really fucking pathetic attempt to try
why
to
should
make
we
an
talk
argument.
about that? Why should we discuss whether or not she has genital feeling? That's not important. It's not. That's none of my business.
So let's focus on the sterilizing of the individual. Are you okay with that?
Who's sterilizing?
Jazz Jennings is sterile.
Why are we going back to Jazz?
Because Jazz
I don't
Jennings
know
is
anything
famous.
about.
Because Jazz is a famous individual on cable television.
So if she is sterile for whatever reason, what does that have to do with me? Why does that concern me? Why should I pass
support the
legislation?
sterilization of teenagers?
This is such a weird way to frame this.
Oh
You're removing
no.
teenagers' ability to have children.
He's literally throwing so hard. Holy shit, man. Lance, you should... My god, dude.
I'm not a doctor. Tim.
You
I don't have
support
the ability
it,
to do this.
right?
I support people having access to healthcare. Of course. Why would I want to prevent that just because some people have bigotry towards them?
Let's try again. You seem scared of this. Do you believe that parents and doctors should have the ability to remove the ability of a child for future reproduction?
They should have the ability to give them access to healthcare. Of course they should.
So why do you keep saying like that?
You're implying that every single gender-affirming care results in sterilization. That is not true.
I said the removal
There's
of
also
the...
people who are trans that never get bottom
You seem very scared of this. It's scaring you.
How am I afraid?
Because you keep deflecting when I ask you. So Jazz Jennings is a specific
Deflecting.
example. Let's try this. Let's slow down and go one.
Allergies.
Dude, he's getting destroyed.
Get ready to take on all three.
Point at a time,
You
right?
think I'm deflecting because I don't want to keep talking about someone's genital pleasure who's a stranger? I'm
Nice
saying
try.
it
Nice
shouldn't
try.
concern
Nice
you.
try.
It shouldn't
Nice
concern
try.
anyone, Tim.
Your appeal to emotion is not going to work on me. I'm asking you a science.
I know I can appeal to your emotion.
I'm trying a logic-based question about the future of these people. I believe you are genociding them. I believe you intend on genociding autistic individuals. I genuinely believe that.
Who's autistic in this?
A large portion of trans kids are autistic, namely females. So this is an issue in that young, lesbian, autistic females are a large portion of those who are transgender.
Do you have data on this?
I mean, come on, bro. Do you have data on what you brought up? You could give me one study. But
I've given you not only studies, meta-studies.
for
I've given you multiple meta-studies on this. I've given you a surplus of information on this topic.
make up six times more likely to have autism, according to NPR.org. So I think you're trying to genocide autistic people. I literally...
Six times more. What's the percentage of? That's what I asked you.
6 times? 60%?
That's not how that works. That's not... You don't
600, sorry.
No, that's not what
You're saying what percent of
What
them are
percentage of trans people happen to be autistic lesbians? That was your claim, that a large portion are. I'm saying I don't know any statistics on that. I've never heard that before.
Well, so the first thing I pulled up was that transgender and non-binary people are 6 times more likely to have autism, right?
Great, but that's not answering the question.
And your question is what portion of... Let me Google it again. Because I thought that was sufficient in 24%.
So that's not the majority, even if that stat is true.
6 times more common. 24%.
That's still not the majority, even if that's statistics.
Yeah, no, the majority is...
24% of trans people are autistic according to that data, and 6% of...
So what I think is, I think that there are people who hate people with Down syndrome, and in Iceland, they've actually publicly avowed or praised their eradication of people with Down syndrome. I think that's horrifying. Like, you can be okay with it. I'm not saying you're not allowed to believe it, right? You don't have to have the same morals as me. I just think it's wrong to genocide, like, people with Down syndrome, you know what I mean?
You've completely derailed this conversation. You're assuming that I'm pro people having abortions for people who have Down syndrome. When we're talking
I'm
about,
not saying you do. I'm saying in Iceland, they've
what does
said
this have to
that
do with trans rights?
right. So we see a higher rate of autistic people.
Okay, come on, Tim.
We also then
it makes
Tim acts like he's not trying to ascribe this onto Lance's beliefs when that's absolutely what he's doing. There's no point in bringing this up if you weren't, like, you were originally talking about his beliefs. He's like, I think you're the one genociding people. And then, like, you can believe in genociding down people with Down syndrome all you want. Like, he's obviously referring to you. So, yeah.
Jordy, it does not even...
Well, I think you're right.
Okay.
24%. Okay. I still believe that this is very much an effort. I think the left is intent on genociding trans people,
In what way?
removing their ability to reproduce.
How are they removing their ability
By
to
cutting
reproduce
off their
them?
testicles and removing their
That is
uteruses.
not the only operation that is done. There are
Nope.
trans people who maintain their same genitals as before. Not
Right.
everyone has to decide to get bottom surgery. That's a choice
And,
they should make.
and cross-sex hormones do have a high rate of causing sterilization.
It can, but it doesn't always. And you can be
like,
trans and not get any operations at all.
So I think you are. So like I'm in favor of making sure these people can always have families and have kids, right? Your position, whether you support the moral issue or not, results in many of them being so. For instance, the reason I use Jazz Jennings as an example because this is a person on television with millions of followers who wrote a book and told kids about this journey. The journey that Jazz Jennings went on resulted in a complete inability to have a family and have children. I think that's terrifying because Jazz was not old enough to understand the implications of that. Jazz will never have a family. Jazz, the genetics of Jazz Jennings is over. That is one of the most horrifying things to me as a human being because I think genocide is wrong, right?
Why should her ability to be or have reproduction function? Why should that concern you?
For the same reason the Uyghur Muslims in China concern me, like human rights issues. China, for instance,
But what if she never wants to have kids?
that's something you determine for yourself later in life.
Exactly. So
after
why is it
going
our
through
business?
Because it's been removed before Jazz could have the ability.
But again,
to
that has nothing to do with us. She could decide to never want to have kids, and that's fine and valid.
Right, so my morals would be that a society protects the children because there are certain things you can't know until you're at least 24 or older when your brain is fully developed, which is why we don't allow people to drink and do certain drugs, whatever drugs are legal, until they're 21. So for me, I'm like, if you can't drink till you're 21, if there's like you can't smoke till you're 18, this society absolutely recognizes you can't drive till a certain age. That the reason that the driving age is what it is, one of the arguments made, I think it was in Illinois, is that risk taking is a lot higher in youth than it is in older people. So the argument is once you're past 16, you go through driver's ed. That helps control for the higher risk taking of younger people. So we set an age limit. For someone who's 10 years old to be put on Lupron and then cross-sex hormones, they will never develop the ability to reproduce. So in the instance of Jazz, again, a famous individual who's very influential with millions of followers, there was never the ability to reproduce developed, which caused complications. Complications aside, that's Jazz's personal business. But the puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones did sterilize Jazz. 100% sterilization. Jazz was not old enough to understand the implications of it.
So what's his broader argument? I think his broader argument is that he's against gender-affirming care or sex reassignment surgery at a young age. I don't know what his position is after the age of like 25 or whatever, but I think that's his belief. I don't watch Tim Pool that much, so I don't know, but that might be his belief. Yeah.
So I have concerns about having children, whether they choose to or their parents choose to. I think that's
I
genocide.
can kind of see your argument, because if the kid was a straight kid, just a kid, and they were like a 12-year-old girl, she's like, I don't want to have babies when I'm older, and the mom was like, okay, then we'll sterilize you right now, and they went and had the kid, had a hysterectomy. I think that's illegal. I don't know, but I would imagine society needs to protect little kids from crazy parents that are like, just because a 12-year-old says they don't have babies later. So the fact that it is sterilizing as a byproduct, I think should be taken into account with the whole procedure.
I think that's still something that comes down to the individual and what they choose to do. And if someone is like, I want to have gender...
That's not a good
then why is
response.
that my business? It's the same thing as someone who wants to have surgery that can have other complications. That's not my business. If someone had an appendix of fame and they had to have their appendix out, there are potential complications that come from that, but I'm not going to prevent them from having healthcare and saying that you can't have a right to get your appendix out, because every major medical association in the United States agrees that that is the best way to treat appendicitis. And in this case, when we're talking about trans people, every single medical association in the United States agrees on gender-affirming care.
Then you know what they
every
should do?
single one.
You know what they should do? They should produce one single randomized controlled trial for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to show that it's safe and effective. But they have not. So it's not healthcare, it's experimentation. You talk about giving kids healthcare. That's not healthcare. Healthcare repairs something which is broken. You use the example of somebody's appendix not functioning properly.
Wait, that's not true. Healthcare isn't just fixing shit. It's also preventing things from happening to you in the first place. Like, you can... Yeah, I'm not getting, don't people get, colonoscopies to prevent the development of, colon cancer? It's not just, fixing shit.
Okay, yes. So what you have to do in that instance is intervene so that the body can function as it is intended to. Destroying somebody's ability to procreate is demolishing the organ that you're claiming to treat, right? You're destroying biological function rather than helping to improve it. That's not healthy.
I want to pull this up too. It's from the University of Utah, because I was reading about this recently. It goes on to mention that hormone replacement therapy can make you sterile. And that it's important. It's important to preserve your sperm. It says if you're trans feminine. Otherwise, the hormone therapy may make it impossible for you to have biological children. If someone is put on puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones as a child, they will never have the ability to preserve their reproductive functions.
So if you're put on puberty blockers, they are reversible. You can stop being on puberty blockers and you can still maintain a lot of things.
Uh-oh.
That taken away.
He's about to walk in a trap.
Specifically, she's actually made statements about this because, I was just looking this up. Jazz Jennings says, I don't regret my transition at all. When I was 11, I started male puberty and I was put on hormone blockers. Those blockers saved my life and continue to save the lives of so many youth out there. If I was forced to go through male puberty, it would have been devastating. Even more so, taking estrogen through hormone replacement allowed my body to develop how I wanted. I blossomed into a young woman, eventually got bottom surgery, and now living as a proud woman today. What does that have to do with me? Why would I want to take that away from someone else? What year was it? She made this on March 31st.
She made it recently because that video came out where the mom said she was going to force the dilatation.
Matt Walsh went hard, and Jazz was like, hey, Matt. And
So,
I was like, sorry, Jazz.
there's a lot of questions around the morality of this. The left likes to defer instantly to purity arguments, which I find fascinating, considering the left typically has a low purity rating when it comes to moral foundations. For example,
What does that mean?
Genitals is a purity argument, which the left typically never makes. That's why I think it's a very weird thing for you to do. Approaching this from an academic perspective, we would make a few arguments about whether or not a person can truly understand they've lost the ability to reproduce if they've never had it in the first place, the psychological and the philosophical implications of stripping away a person's ability to reproduce before they were old enough to even know what that was. So, for example, if you take an adult human, female or male, and remove their genitals by force, they will be very, very upset. Extremely upset. In fact,
Wait, hold on. So, he says by force. I don't think that's happening. People who get sex reassignment surgery are usually not doing it against their will. I don't even think they're doing it through coercion. It's not like they're being forced and strapped down to get their genitals removed. It's a
form of torture in a lot of countries. It's meant to terrify. If you took away their ability...
So the framing here is already dishonest.
Torture. In fact, female circumcision is horrifying to the world, and it actually has huge controversies up in Dearborn, Michigan, because what it would do is it would result in women who, as adults, could not feel anything.
Which has nothing to do with gender-affirming care.
So in making an academic argument, we would say, Jazz Jennings does not understand, and that's fine if Jazz is happy. That's great. The argument into the greater is Jazz will never have kids. In fact, I think it's wrong to take away that from someone who doesn't understand what it is. They will decide that when they're an adult and have assessed the circumstances. But Jazz can't actually feel any of this. Jazz can't feel. This was a study. There's a doctor came out did a Zoom video on it, specifically I think referring to Jazz, that Jazz will never experience any adult satisfaction or desire. And so the question then becomes, why did Jazz get bottom surgery? My question: why do you think Jazz got bottom surgery?
Oh, I don't have to answer that. She explained why. She said that she's satisfied with it. That should be the extent of it.
What did she say?
I don't regret my transition at all. When I was 11, I started male puberty and I was put on hormone blockers. Those blockers saved my life and continued to save the lives of so many youth out there. If I was forced to go through male puberty, it would have been devastating. Even more, taking estrogen through hormone replacement allowed my body to develop how I wanted. I blossomed into a young woman, eventually got bottom surgery, and I'm living as a proud woman today. Yes, I do struggle with mental health and always have, but it's not because I transitioned, and it's unfortunately something many LGBTQ plus people face. Why? Because it has a lot to do with hate and a lack of acceptance that we receive in society, like I was saying before. So all of you speaking about our mental health reviews and calling our families abusers for supporting our transition, you are the only abusers.
So what was the purpose of the bottom surgery?
It affirmed her gender. It affirmed her gender.
What does that mean, affirmed her gender?
So,
Dude, come on! Oh my god.
She affirmed her gender through the process of getting bottom surgery to look more and feel more like a woman.
Why do you think Jazz stopped dilating?
I don't know.
Like it's hurt.
But if this was an important part of affirmation, you think Jazz would maintain it?
That's not for me to decide. That's someone else's own identity. So again, that's why it's weird to me to try and impose this upon someone else. Like to try and say like you're disgusted at the fact that she can't have kids or something like that. It's like I don't know if she ever wants kids because I don't know who she is. But that's a decision for her to make between her and her doctor. It has nothing to do with
Why would any trans child get bottom surgery?
again.
So the answer to that is that they usually can't get bottom surgery. But why they would want to is probably on account of their gender dysphoria. If you think about it for 2 seconds, you can kind of come to the conclusion, or come to that realization. It's not really difficult, but...
And to affirm their gender.
So
as part of gender affirming care.
Why
and children don't get bottom surgery, by the way. It's usually over 18.
Well, Jazz was 17.
Right, and so there are exceptions.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Average age is over 18. Like Boston's Children's Hospital has never done that on anyone under the age of 18. The average age for bottom surgery is over 18.
So
Overwhelming.
why would I just don't understand why it's not penile breaking I don't know what it's called because Jazz didn't have penis. What's the purpose of making the whole space? What's the purpose of that?
What's the
Dude, what are we talking about now?
operation is because it gives it affirms their gender through the process of having a similar genitalia to a cisgender.
What's the purpose of it?
I just explained that.
So the purpose of it is just feeling, just emotion.
No, the purpose of it is part of affirming who they are through a surgery that makes them look and feel more like a version of a woman that they want to be.
Does he not understand what gender dysphoria actually is? Like, Tim?
You don't have to. There's not a template. That's not the only version a woman can be. There's other versions of how a woman can be and look, but that's the version that she wanted.
So what I'm trying to understand is why create a permanent wound for the purpose of a man to have sex with in order to affirm the identity of someone who can't feel any of that?
Well, first off, I have no idea about the actual sensations that people experience after these kind of surgeries, but that's not my business. And the second thing would be, I don't believe it's a wound. I believe it's an operation to have a general change. That's it. To describe it as a wound is just very crude.
But it's factually a wound, right? I'm trying to avoid the right calls it mutilation or an abomination. I'm not saying that.
But it's still crude to just call it a wound. After it's healed, I'm sure there's no more
No,
scars or
they
anything.
dilate for the rest of their lives because it is a wound. Like, I'm being academic. I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody. The right calls it mutilation and abomination. The reason they have to use dilators for the rest of their lives is because it is factually a wound.
But you're asking me a question that I can't answer because I'm not this individual. I don't know why someone would want to get that surgery because I'm cis and I don't experience these kind of things. But if someone
And
wants to,
that's
but Tim, if someone wants to and it makes them feel better and improves their quality of life, then why do we have to get in the way of that?
Well, can I
Right, so
interject here?
my
Because-
position is for adults, I agree. And I had the argument with Tom Fitton. He said it should be banned outright. I disagree.
But overwhelmingly, when you look at the data, when it happens to children, it improves their psychological distress, it removes and lowers suicidal ideation. It shows in the data that it helps them.
That's not true, man. So
No,
the
it is
studies you have
absolutely
here,
true.
the study you have here, the largest
Absolutely
one. So first of all, as I mentioned, there have been no controlled randomized trial, but the largest study you
For
cited there,
puberty blockers.
the largest study that you cited there does not say what you think it says. The Stanford University one, it was 27,000 people who were surveyed in 2015, and then there were 2 analyses done of these studies by Jack Turbin, and he lumped data together and did a few manipulative things to get the results he wanted. But there's 2 very important things to mention, which is firstly, this study was based on convenience sampling. So they were speaking with people who were sent to them by LGBTQ advocacy groups and groups that they reach out to. So you're already not.
So I can't speak to the I can't speak to the legitimacy of this man's, it very well could be the case that the study was biased in some respects. Maybe it was. However, there's definitely a lot of research out there that suggests that gender-affirming care is beneficial to the trans community, especially their mental health.
Getting an unbiased population sample there. And then they were determining whether that person received puberty blockers and other such treatments or hadn't, but they didn't go over the reasons. In fact, the people who hadn't received puberty blockers or those kinds of treatments didn't receive them because they weren't allowed to. And one of the requirements for being able to receive that kind of treatment is some level of psychological stability, which means the people who weren't on puberty blockers in that study were more likely to be psychologically unstable, which we would expect to produce a higher suicide rate, but that wasn't controlled for. On top of that, the data actually shows that the men who were on estrogen were more likely to become suicidal. But what he ended up doing, that's true, what he ended up doing was lumping them together. So he said people on cross-sex hormones are less likely to commit suicide because according to the sample he had of women, that was true enough to overcompensate for the increased likelihood of suicidality in the men, and he just threw them all together as if a man taking estrogen is the same thing as a woman taking testosterone, and we could expect the same medical outcomes.
So everything he's saying could very well be true. I would have to dig into the actual. I would have to dig into it myself to make any prescriptive statements. So I'm not gonna make a comment on that.
Saying that's bullshit.
So to respond to you, I do have a number of peer-reviewed studies related to this.
And if they're as good as that one, I'm telling you they're trash.
Mental health outcomes in transgender non-binary youth receiving gender-affirming care. February 25th, 2022. This one shows kids who receive puberty blockers and hormone therapy had 60% lower odds of moderate or severe depression.
He's not responding, Lance. He's not responding to
The
them.
American Academy of Pediatrics peer-reviewed July 13th, 2022. Between 317 youth, they found 94% of binary transgender stayed the same. Only 2.5% reverting as cisgender. 3.5% as non-binary trans. A UK 2019 study of 3,300.
We definitely need a church here.
Found that only 0.47% regretted it. Another one. The impact of strong parental support for trans youth found
And then
that
we're gonna have
parents
to
who support
delete
trans
that,
youth,
unfortunately.
433 participants, double-blind study, 93% reduction in reported suicides.
Hold on, and I think we can all have the good faith that you did as much work fact-checking those studies as you did the one I just tore apart, but I didn't have time to go into every single bit of it.
This is the problem with, like you mentioned, going to studies back and forth or whatever. So that's why I'm fine with. I'm not here to change your morals, right? And that's fine. So my question would just be, why do you think it is that in Europe they've abandoned these practices?
A lot of it was political. if you look at the history of it, especially when it came to QB blockers and how that was handled, it was in large part a political decision that both medical groups, advocates, as well as pro-LGBTQ organizations outwardly protested. And especially, like, I know you're going to bring up Finland, I believe was one of the countries that did it, Sweden as well. And
UK.
Yeah, and in a number of cases, this is something which experts in the fields of endocrinology, pediatrics, they were very opposed to it. It was politicians who were pushing for this, and so this was a political decision. This is why I don't like when politics get directly involved in medical decisions, because, I mean, like you were saying, if you want to look up the actual organizations that support this, it's every major medical association in the United States. Everyone.
Oh, is this a different,
But they're for profit.
Oh, it is,
Sometimes
okay.
Don't get politically involved in the medical industry. They'll experiment on humans for money.
And also,
Some of them
to be
are.
fair,
Some
like-
of them are not. If I listed them to you right now, because I have the list, some of these are not for-profit institutions just looking to make a fucking buck. Some of these are just genuinely concerned about child health care.
Sure.
And some of them have various, ideological biases. This isn't always about money all the time. But if you're going to reject what Tim is saying about medical institutions no longer performing these operations in Nordic Europe because you're claiming those institutions have become political, I don't know how you could give any credibility to the American ones.
So it's not the
Do you think the American model of practicing medicine is better than the model in
Let
Nordic
me
Europe?
answer your question.
Okay.
It's not the organizations themselves that have done it distinctly. It was politicians and political organizations as well as think tanks that were pushing for it, and it was a lot of experts in the field that directly wanted it not to happen. That were fighting
I
against
understand.
it.
Why is it the case that the nation that started doing this earlier than any of the others was the Netherlands? They started around 1990 administering puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for children who purported to be struggling with feelings of dysphoria. And so they have some of the longest-term data available on this. And what they found is that transitioning has no effect on suicidality.
That's part of the studies that I'm interested in, is the suicide stuff. Like, in 2022, they measured a bunch of people that transitioned. They were suicidal, they transitioned, now they're not. But it's like, hey, that was 8 months ago. Like, how are you going to feel in 4 years from now? So it's hard to say, like, now they're no longer suicidal just because they're like, yeah, I'm not suicidal now. But, like, we need long-term studies.
We do need to go to super chats because we're way past. But I do want to ask another just question. Like, do you think the Earth is overpopulated?
No, I don't.
You don't think so?
No, I want more people. I love people. I want more Earth. I want more humans. I love everybody, man. I want more people on this planet.
But what about climate change?
Climate change is coming. It's real. It's happening right now.
But I mean,
But you're not Malthusian then?
No.
yeah,
Okay.
but more people means more climate change. You got more mouths to feed. You got more fuels to burn.
But more orgasms.
It also means more scientists
Well,
figuring
that
out.
was kind of weird, right?
More humans doesn't necessarily mean more climate change, because more humans might figure out better ways to balance out the climate.
I'll just say one last thing, then we'll go to super chats, and then I guess I want to try and get to the members only board. Actually, and I feel bad for going long. We should go to the members portion so we can do audience.
Man, I don't know what the issue is with this crime.
I'll
It's
try
kind of
to do what I
weird.
can, and then we'll try we'll go straight to Q&A.
I guess we're gonna need
But my
more.
attitude is I'm not a conservative. I'm pro-choice. I think I've got my morality, but in the long term, I really don't care that leftists are sterilizing and aborting their children.
I thought you did care.
From a moral position, but like, I'm not a conservative like Seamus, where Seamus is very much like, you have to end this because it's wrong. I'm not a conservative. If a woman is going to get an abortion at a certain age, I'm like, I disagree with it, but I'm more libertarian in the respect of like people can choose to do what they want to do. I think it's certainly wrong to sterilize kids, but the end result is the future's going to be a bunch of Christian conservatives and Muslims.
Whoa, we got some backup here.
Yes, but the Jewish population diaspora is like 12 million, and Christians and Muslims are billions. So like,
But that's happening in Israel, right? Where the more religious Jews have more children, so they're accommodating.
Oh, I see the
Right,
issue.
exactly. And so we saw this.
We're
in
gonna have to put a light here.
liberals have been effectively shrinking.
There's,
Gen Z is the first generation in 100 years to slightly
too
more
much traffic
liberal
going on.
in some areas. Likely not because Gen Z is becoming conservative, but because there's less liberal Gen Zers than there are conservative ones. So the end result of all of this is just like, look, man, I'm not going to convince you to vote the way I would vote. I'm not going to convince Seamus to vote the way I would vote. But it doesn't matter anyway, because in 100 years, you guys are sterilizing and aborting your kids. End of story.
Wait a minute, not you.
Well, yeah,
I'm
I
saying
think
for
he's
political.
saying I
Left,
represent the left.
Do you feel like you represent
You
the
call
left?
yourself a left.
I don't feel that.
Well, you call yourself a left.
But I'm a proud leftist. I wear that. I don't have to hide that. I don't hide my power.
Well, so
I don't wear some kind of like hidden.
My point is just this, right?
I'm just saying I'm not. I'm like there's no single voice for the left. I'm not the voice for the left.
No, sure. I'm just saying the left will cease to exist, and the middle
Whoa.
will supplant it, and then the middle will become the left, and the right will stay the right.
Here's what I'll say: is that LGBTQ plus people were heavily persecuted by a lot of different groups, including the Nazis at one point in their history, and you just can't get rid of it.
And
Nazis.
And if you were to get rid of every single queer, if you got rid of every single gay, every single lesbian, every single bisexual, every single trans person, if you got rid of all of them in a generation or two, they would reappear. Because they're a part of us. They're a part of humanity. They're a part of all of us. They just exist. They are a part of the human experience.
Yeah, but I think that chart you showed with the left-handed thing,
Yeah.
if Christians and Muslims start dominating, they're going to be repressed, right? So the idea is it's like basic math. We saw this in 2000. Liberals were having 1.45 kids and conservatives having 2.01 kids. So conservatives were at replacement levels and liberals weren't. 20 years later, we see slightly more for the first time ever.
I'm hoping this recurs. I don't know why the
Gen Z
crime
is
rate's so
about,
high.
according to Pew, as progressive as millennials. In some areas, a little bit more progressive. In some areas, a little bit more conservative, which is shocking because every generation was skewing more progressive. This is
Okay, I think we've exhausted this convo for what it's worth. Let me save this first. Alright. Okay. What have we learned today? I think Lance had some good moments, but he did not do well enough, in my opinion. He seemed kind of all over the place at times, and also didn't really respond. He his responses were accepting some premises from Tim that I would have taken more disagreement with, I guess. So, like, I would have been more concentrated on focusing on the disagreement part. Let me take this part out. Okay. There were some things that I think I would have done better. Or, not me personally, but some things that I think could have been done better. But I don't know, man. Shit's whack. Anyway, with that, I guess that's going to be it for today. That's all I wanted to really go over. I didn't watch this beforehand. I saw like a clip or whatever, but that was it. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess that'll be it for today, and I'll see you guys next week or next Thursday.